subscribe, like the video, and, if possible, join Patreon. But if you don't have much money, you can support the channel by watching the novels on euroaudiobooks.com. Remember that you can participate in the polls so that your favorite novel gets published for free.
Childhood memories. Those women's crazy actions every time they see him. It's hard to hold back. Otherwise, why is Ishigamihara so cold? There are reasons for this. If he has a gentler personality, I'm afraid those women can wash him with saliva. I'm Ishigamihara, and I'm here to guard under the order of Lord Orochimaru. I found range shinobi's men 2 kilometers away. There are 8 of them, probably 2 ninja teams. You take this message back and ask Lord Orochimaru to make early preparations and take precautions. I guess Sand Shinobi will definitely launch a surprise attack on the camp in the next few days. The man was shocked when he heard this and asked, "Where are the people?" Ishigamihara said, "Don't alert them for now. Wait for Orochimaru's order." I understand. The man was also very straightforward. He left without hesitation and was anxious to go back and report the news. After everyone left, Ishigamihara simply sat cross-legged on the tree branch and waited quietly. Orochimaru's order did not surprise Ishigamihara. He did not ask Ishigamihara to eliminate the 2 range shinobi teams, but asked someone to bring Ishigamihara a new defense map. In this way, Ishigamihara understood Orochimaru's intention, which was obviously to lure the range shinobi side to take the initiative to attack. Ishigamihara expected that the rear camp must have made corresponding deployments at this time. It is true that the camp's momentum is low, but this kind of thing will definitely change with the arrival of Orochimaru in Nawaki, especially Nawaki's identity, which can play an unexpected role at this time. These are not within Ishigamihara's consideration, because as time goes by, Ishigamihara becomes more and more vigilant. It was because that special chakra appeared again in the surroundings, and it was very hidden. Even with Ishigamihara's perception, he could only sense it vaguely, and could only vaguely sense the existence of the other party, but could not accurately determine the exact location of the other party. In this way, Ishigamihara naturally had a guess about these newly appeared chakras, and estimated that they should be white Zetsu. There was more than one new white Zetsu. In Ishigamihara's perception, there were more than 10 similar chakras, scattered within a 2-kilometer range, quietly hidden. With so many white Zetsu appearing, Ishigamihara didn't even need to guess, and he knew that Uchiha Madara must care about him. Time passed in Ishigamihara's vigilance, and 2 days had passed in the blink of an eye. During these 2 days, Ishigamihara walked around and had a good idea of the surrounding environment. The reality was just as he expected. Range shinobi did make a big move. There were quite a few range shinobi ninjas who entered Ishigamihara's perception range. There were probably hundreds of them. They came from the north and headed directly towards the Konoha camp. Ishigamihara raised his lips slightly, raised 2 fingers, and then looked in one direction. There was a sudden fire and smoke, followed by a rumbling explosion. Swish! The next moment, Ishigamihara disappeared and appeared dozens of meters away. After a few jumps, he headed in that direction. However, during the action, Ishigamihara's eyes moved, seemingly looking in one direction, and at the same time, he was asking Uchiha Izuna in his mind, "Have you noticed a special chakra fluctuation?" Uchiha Izuna answered very straightforwardly, "You block my chakra, I can't feel it." Upon hearing this, Ishigamihara unlocked Uchiha Izuna's chakra control, but the latter's answer surprised him. "I didn't feel anything. Are you too nervous?" Ishigamihara nodded slightly, but his footsteps speeded up. "Nervous? Maybe," Uchiha Izuna said. "The movement here must have been noticed by the camp behind you. Isn't this exactly what you planned?" Ishigamihara said, "The ninjas of range shinobi are easy to deal with, but if Hans of the Salamander comes in person, it will still be a lot of pressure for the people here. Do you still care about these?" Uchiha Izuna was surprised. "No, you misunderstood. I just feared that my battle with Hans of the Salamander would be disturbed by others." Soon, Ishigamihara found range shinobi's team, and the battle started instantly. 042 Manjiki, over 40 years ago, swish. A sharp blade flashed in the air, breaking through the air and emitting a sharp whistle. The ranged shinobi ninja team did not react at all, and the head of the leader had already rolled down and blood rushed into the sky like a fountain. The next moment, the remaining people in the ranged shinobi team finally reacted and subconsciously wanted a counterattack in the direction of the sound. Kunai and shuriken flew together, but they had already lost the target of the enemy. Enemy attack. One person screamed and turned around to look for the enemy's trace. But the next moment, he suddenly felt a pain in his heart and looked down in shock and saw that his chest had been pierced by a kunai at some point. There was still a shadow in his sight, but when he reacted, the shadow had already disappeared, and the man could only fall to the ground in despair, and the blood soon dyed the ground red. Ah, over there. Someone finally saw the enemy figure. The sound here also attracted the attention of others at the moment of the battle. For a while, ranged shinobi people rushed to this direction everywhere. The number of people in the ranged shinobi raid team this time was not small, but they were not gathered together like a group march. The existence of ninjas destined that the ninja war could not be the same as Ishigamihara's previous life. Ninjas would be more powerful only if they were dispersed. In the field, 2 people from the ranged shinobi team were killed almost instantly. After the remaining 2 people reacted, they did not think about escaping at the first time, but about chasing the enemy. So after discovering Ishigamihara's figure, they chased him directly. This place is a small forest with trees of different heights and not too dense, but this environment is very suitable for assassination for ninjas. Ishigamihara's figure suddenly appeared behind a tree, paused slightly, and then disappeared again. The next moment, one person pursued and made a speech. Just as he was about to make a move, a dark spell appeared under his feet, and his body suddenly froze. Not good. This was the last thought of this person, because the next moment, the tree trunk behind him exploded violently. Boom! The loud noise shook the 4 directions, attracting everyone's attention. Ishigamihara's figure was like a ghost, his eyes scanning around. His terrible dynamic vision made him look like a shadow, and he disappeared in an instant, and every move was extremely decisive and sharp. Puff! With a short blade in his hand, Ishigamihara crossed with a ranged shinobi youth. A handful of blood fell, and Ishigamihara disappeared without a trace. In the past, Uchiha Azuna might have commented on this, but as time went on, Ishigamihara's fighting rhythm had already matured, and what he showed now was something that even Uchiha Azuna didn't know. Too beautiful, too perfect. Uchiha Azuna, who shared Ishigamihara's vision, sighed in his heart at this moment, because Ishigamihara's fighting rhythm was so perfect that he couldn't find any faults with his vision. The more he watched, the more excited Uchiha Azuna became, but at the same time he felt pain because he couldn't fight with such an existence. For an Uchiha like Uchiha Azuna, this kind of thing was like a gourmet, seeing delicious food but not being able to eat it. As a guest living in Ishigamihara's own body, there's a certain connection between the chakras of the two, so Ishigamihara can more or less feel Uchiha Azuna's emotions transmitted through the chakra. The corners of his mouth were unconsciously raised, and this feeling of being recognized by a battle expert was not bad. Dang! Ishigamihara blocked a kunai with his hand, released the seal with one hand, and a flame rose up, turning into a fire dragon, and instantly rushed forward. Boom! The fire dragon exploded and burst upon landing. The shock waves spread out, and the smoke and dust rose up. Dung dung dung. Another kunai and shuriken were blocked by Ishigamihara, and Ishigamihara's figure had disappeared in the smoke and dust, making the ranged shinobi ninjas who were almost surrounded lose their target. The battlefield was already noisy at this moment, with the shouting and fighting of the ranged shinobi, the roar of the ninjutsu, and the screams of kunai and shuriken, all gathered in the smoke and dust. The concentrated fire attack of dozens of people is extremely terrifying in any place, and even the shadow-level ninjas have to be careful to deal with it. Ishigamihara's response was very simple. He just performed a technique. Fire style, great fire extinguishing. Boom! The raging flames instantly blew away the smoke and dust, and as Ishigamihara turned his body, the surroundings turned into a sea of blazing fire. The raging flames were like rolling waves, spreading wildly in all directions. The flames soared to a height of 20 to 30 meters, and the power in an instant made the scene quiet. Swish! At this moment, countless sounds of breaking through the air sounded around, but those ranged shinobi were horrified and quickly moved away with the instant body technique. It was really that the power of such a ninjutsu seemed a bit beyond the scope for them. How can it be so strong? What kind of technique is this? Is it from Konoha? Damn it, we can't just do this. Let's use ninjutsu together and definitely kill this guy. Shouting was everywhere, especially when many ranged shinobi saw their companions being engulfed by the flames. The unwillingness and anger could not be hidden. Water style, stormy water. A dull voice sounded in the distance, as if it came through a mask. Then, in the forest 40 or 50 meters away, a huge wave rushed in. Almost at the first sight, it engulfed the blazing and terrifying flames, and instantly filled with large pieces of steam and white mist, blowing in all directions. Ishigamihara frowned, and when he jumped up, he made seals with his hands one after another. After landing on the water, he held his breath as soon as he landed. In his mind, Uchiha Izuna's voice sounded. Someone is coming, and the person is not simple. Be careful with this water, it's poisonous. Ishigamihara knew who was coming without Uchiha Izuna saying it. There would be no one else except Hans of the Salamander. Otherwise, Ishigamihara would not have held his breath at the first time. Sure enough, a person came on the water in the distance, breaking through the steam and white smoke, and appeared in Ishigamihara's sight. Wearing a ranged shinobi standard ninja vest, a sword cape, holding a hammer sickle, his eyes were gloomy and murderous. The little devil from Konoha can actually do this. It's amazing. Ishigamihara said nothing, just stared at the other party quietly. In his mind, Uchiha Izuna spoke again. Leave him to me. Ishigamihara could feel Uchiha Izuna's boiling fighting spirit, thought about it, and did not refuse. Okay, but you only have 10 minutes. Is the demigod in the ninja world strong? Of course it is strong. As an absolute hardliner among Uchiha, Uchiha Izuna, who fought with the Senju clan until his death, saw such a strong man in the ninja world, he would naturally show the idea of fighting with him. At this moment, Ishigamihara gave up the dominance of his body and closed his eyes slightly. The next moment, Ishigamihara opened both eyes, one white and one red, which were very special, but the left eye was the most bizarre. The white eye was covered by Uchiha Izuna's chakra, gradually revealing a scarlet color, and almost in the blink of an eye, it turned into Sharingan, and the pair of Sharingan turned into Manjiki's triangular lock pattern in the next moment. This is Uchiha Izuna's Sharingan, which appeared in the ninja world again after more than 40 years. At the same time, in a forest more than 20 kilometers away, Uchiha Madara suddenly looked up with an expression of disbelief. This is Izuna's chakra. How is it possible? 043, the terror of Hans of the Salamander, Uchiha Madara's expression was very surprised, doubtful, ecstatic, and mostly confused. With his chakra perception ability, this judgment is not wrong, especially that it was his younger brother, the closest relative who accompanied him in the first half of his life. The feeling of ruthlessness in the chakra was absolutely impossible to be wrong. How could it be? Uchiha Madara stopped in place. His body was a little stiff, and for a moment he didn't know what to do. Obviously, he was the Shura of the ninja world, and he and Senju Hashirama suppressed the entire ninja world, but now he felt timid and very confused. Taking a deep breath, Uchiha Madara's face suddenly became fierce. No matter who it is, if anyone dares to blaspheme Izuna's soul, I will kill him. Muttering to himself, Uchiha Madara disappeared from the spot and quickly rushed towards the source of the chakra fluctuations. On the other side, in the battlefield, the water waves surged. It was an ordinary B-level water-style ninjutsu, but in Hans of the Salamander, it was as powerful as the forbidden technique. The surrounding water waves can be regarded as a small lake, and the lake water did not spread directly, but was fixed in a certain range, which was quite strange. What people care most is the wisps of mist floating in the lake, which is a light purple, which is obviously highly toxic. It is also thanks to the ninjas of Rain Shinobi that each of them is wearing a respirator like Hans of the Salamander. Otherwise, they might be poisoned to death just by smelling the mist. As for Ishigamihara, at this moment, the light red chakra flames are burning all over his body. That is the performance after the chakra explodes to a certain extent. The surrounding toxic air cannot get close to him at all. Even if it gets close, the toxins in it will be wiped out in an instant. At this time, Ishigamihara's body was controlled by Uchiha Azuna. With his experience, this poison was nothing. A strong man who grew up during the Sengoku period would not be troubled by such a small matter. Not far away, Hans of the Salamander was originally looking at the boy in front of him, but the change in Ishigamihara's eyes made him slightly startled, especially the eyes with a triangular lock pattern, which made Hans of the Salamander vaguely uneasy. So that's it. This is Mangeki Sharingan. It's really a pair of scary eyes. How long has it not appeared in the ninja world? Speaking like this, Hans of the Salamander stared at Ishigamihara and said in a heavy tone, "Kid, are you from the Uchiha clan?" What responded to him was a series of low laughter, which was suppressed at first and then gradually amplified until Ishigamihara covered his forehead and roared to the sky with a strong joy in his voice. That's the feeling, yes, that's the feeling of being alive. It's really great. After saying that, Ishigamihara lowered his head and stared at Hans of the Salamander, carefully looking at his whole body, and then slowly raised the short blade in his hand. It can be seen that you should be a master of swordsmanship. Do you want to warm up with swordsmanship first? Although he said so, Uchiha Azuna actually didn't give Hans of the Salamander a chance to choose, because the moment the voice fell, Ishigamihara's body had already rushed out. Whoosh! Its momentum was like fire and lightning. It was just a simple sprint. Wherever it passed, a half-meter deep gully was broken on the water's surface, shaking waves. So fast, Hans of the Salamander's eyes condensed, raised his hand and made a diagonal cut, and the curved sickle in his hand flashed a cold light and chopped straight towards Ishigamihara. Dang! The short blade blocked the blow just right. Ishigamihara's body was frozen, and sparks flew where the short blade in his hand collided with the sickle. Bang! With a muffled sound, a wave of air surged with the position of the two people as the center of the circle, stirring up large waves, and the water surface was undulating. This, Ishigamihara snorted coldly. Is it because of age? Hans of the Salamander and Ishigamihara were wrestling, one tall and one short. Even though Ishigamihara is not a weakling now, he has not grown up completely after all, and his height alone is a big disadvantage. Strength is easy to say. The effect of the LV4 training skill has made Ishigamihara's body strength far beyond that of ordinary people, especially with the effect of strengthening the body and strengthening the muscles and bones, is even more incomparable to ordinary people. So when the two wrestled, Uchiha Azuna only felt that he was not tall enough and suffered a little, while Hans of the Salamander suddenly opened his eyes with a hint of surprise in his eyes, feeling that the strength of the young man in front of him could actually compete with him. Thinking of this, Hans of the Salamander's eyes suddenly flashed with murderous intent. He turned his wrist and thrust the sickle forward, cutting towards Ishigamihara's neck. Ishigamihara's reaction was even faster. He leaned back and kicked Hans of the Salamander's waist with his toes. Bang! Dang! The sickle was blocked by the short sword again, and Ishigamihara's toes were held by Hans of the Salamander's other hand. I got you. Hans of the Salamander was delighted, but he quickly let go of it the next moment, because fire suddenly burst out from Ishigamihara's toes. Fire-style dragon fire technique. Hans of the Salamander narrowed his eyes slightly, and was even more surprised, because he didn't even notice when Ishigamihara completed the seal, which was simply unbelievable. A flash of fire shot up into the sky, and Hans of the Salamander retreated, creating some distance between him and Ishigamihara. But the next moment, the water beneath his feet suddenly exploded, and Ishigamihara jumped out, holding a short blade in his hand, and went straight to Hans of the Salamander's neck with a ruthless and merciless attack. Clang! The sound of metal clashing rang out one after another, accompanied by sparks flying everywhere, and the two had fought back and forth for more than 10 times. Throughout the process, Ishigamihara was extremely swift, and his moves were crisp and clear. When the short blade slashed, his body movements were full of an inexplicable beauty, which was wonderful. Sure enough, this is Uchiha style. Hans of the Salamander had already made up his mind, and the young man in front of him must be eliminated today. Inexplicably, Hans of the Salamander became more and more frightened as he fought, and even at a certain moment, his body felt a little cold. I can't imagine what will happen to Rain Shinobi Village if such a young man grows up. A figure appeared behind a thick tree a few hundred meters away, staring at the battlefield, first frowning, then looking dazed. Slanting cassock slash, reverse cross slash, Ikemonji secret killing technique. These are all Azuna's swordsmanship. How is it possible? 044 old school ninja clash. If it was still a little unbelievable before, then what was in front of him now was reality. Uchiha even wondered if he was dazzled. Otherwise, why could he feel the chakra of his younger brother Azuna on a boy, and even see the same attack moves as Azuna? Uchiha was too familiar with them. In excitement, Uchiha didn't even notice that he crushed the tree trunk at hand. His eyes were still staring at the boy who was fighting. Inexplicably, a figure appeared in front of him, and that figure slowly began to merge with the boy. Izuna, in the field, on the water, Ishigura and Hans of the Salamander fought back and forth, and the surroundings were gradually surrounded by Rain Shinobi's people. As long as Hans of the Salamander gave an order, they would swarm up and kill the enemy. However, Hans of the Salamander did not issue an order immediately. It was difficult to find an opponent, not only for Uchiha Azuna, but also for Hans of the Salamander. During this period, Hans of the Salamander had not completely lost his ambition to dominate the ninja world. He was still proud and not the old man who could use conspiracy with Shimura Dans to harm others for power in the later period. Therefore, Hans of the Salamander was also immersed in the long-lost battle in Uchiha Azuna. Water-style tornado water explosion. Earth-style mud rush technique. Combined ninjutsu tornado rush technique. After another fight, Hans of the Salamander swung his sickle and cast a ninjutsu with both hands. The water under his feet suddenly rolled up and turned into a water tornado, rushing forward madly. At the same time, the mud under the water surface shot out and merged into the water tornado, and at the same time clumps, making the water tornado look even bigger. From a distance, it looked like a mudslide carrying rocks and yellow mud, rushing towards Ishigamihara. The power of this combination of ninjutsu is definitely higher than that of L-level ninjutsu. Just looking at the diameter of the tornado exceeding 20 meters, it can be seen that this is definitely a ninjutsu with amazing group lethality. Seeing this scene, Ishigamihara, who was controlled by Uchiha Azuna, responded quickly and retreated rapidly to distance himself from the huge tornado, while also forming seals with both hands. If you look closely, it is not difficult to find that the seals he formed are almost exactly the same as those of Hans of the Salamander, and even 3 times faster in terms of speed. Combined ninjutsu, tornado stream technique. The same water tornado, the same sludge rolled into it, the same sludge clumps, and finally formed an identical huge tornado, with a sense of being the last to arrive, heading towards the huge tornado. Seeing this scene, both Hans of the Salamander and others were shocked. The former was not bad. After knowing that the enemy was Uchiha, he had expected that this scene might appear. After all, Sharingan can copy the number of people, which is recognized by the ninja world. The other ninjas of Rain Shinobi opened their mouths wide at this time. They could not believe the scene in front of them. The leader's combined ninjutsu was actually used by someone in the same way. This is a bit too shocking. At the same time, Uchiha Madara, who was hiding in the dark, was watching attentively, not missing any details. After seeing this scene, his expression was full of joy. It's Izuna's habit. He uses his powerful chakra and insight to copy the ninjutsu used by the opponent, and then crushes the enemy with the same ninjutsu, making the enemy despair. Uchiha was reluctant to look away. Although he had not seen the boy yet, the various performances on his body were enough for Uchiha to conclude that the boy in front of him was definitely related to Izuna. Boom! The two powerful combined ninjutsu collided in the next moment, and the roar was instantly heard. The water-style lake under the feet of the two people exploded with countless water splashes at this time, like a stormy sea. The water surface in the area where the two people were located had disappeared, and even because the aftermath of the collision was too strong, the ground below had been exposed. Hans the Salamander had already experienced the power of Uchiha Izuna. Worried about the purpose of this trip, knowing that he could no longer delay, he bit his finger and quickly formed a seal. Summoning technique. Boom! There was a light explosion, followed by the appearance of a huge creature. It was a huge monster over 30 meters tall, with dark skin and a lot of mucus on its surface. There were granular protrusions on its back like a toad. It looked like a giant salamander, but its body was slightly flat. As soon as it came out, it opened its mouth and spit out a purple protrusion towards Ishigamihara. Wherever it passed, the water was polluted into lavender, and the trees contaminated by the poison gas withered in an instant, which showed how strong its toxicity was. Such a strong toxicity, I'm afraid Uchiha Izuna would not dare to try it easily. The next moment, a lavender half-body appeared outside Ishigamihara's body, with clear ribs, and then muscle lines grew on the ribs, and finally half-body armor, holding a chakra-long sword, and dealing with it cautiously. Uchiha was a little out of control at this moment. Because the previous scene shocked him, because the half-body of Susanoo was exactly the same as Uchiha Izuna in terms of appearance and color. How is it possible? How is it possible? Is it some kind of secretary in Konoha? Is it impure world reincarnation? No, that's not right. It's not impure world reincarnation, but what is it? Uchiha fell silent. Amaterasu. With a whoosh, a jet of black flame fell on the water, but it was like a pool of water that was not extinguished, and it even burned the water, not to mention the poisonous gas that had already attacked Ishigamihara. 045. The tree world descends upon the ninja world again. The huge, giant, salamander-like creature, the salamander, seemed to be very afraid of the dark flames. After the flames appeared, it paused in its roar. Feeling the emotions of the summoning beast under him, Hans of the Salamander frowned. Looking at the equally huge bust in front of him, he felt the pressure increase sharply. Yes, that's it. The ultimate power of the Uchiha clan. The monster called Susanoo. Hans of the Salamander formed seals with his hands and stomped his foot hard, and the salamander under him also tensed up at the same time. The next moment, the salamander suddenly opened its mouth and spewed out a huge amount of dark purple venom. Water-style mist technique. A cloud of gas like white smoke blew out of its mouth, and the gas merged into the dark purple venom of the salamander, which suddenly sublimated rapidly like boiling, and turned into a larger purple mist rising up in an instant. Quickly retreat. The many mist shinobi ninjas who were watching saw this, and someone immediately gave the order, and then they quickly took action to leave this dangerous place. As subordinates of Hans of the Salamander, they naturally knew the terribleness of the leader's attack this time. It was a deadly poison that could kill everything and nothing could stop it. Swish! Many mist shinobi hurriedly evacuated, fearing that they would be affected if they ran too late. Almost in an instant, only the two hostile parties were left in the field. Chi. The huge Susa bust was now shrouded in poisonous fog, and the chakra on its surface actually felt corroded, making a hissing sound. Even the purple poison, in some form, seemed to have entered the Susanoo bust along with the chakra. Seeing this scene, Ishigamihara's eyes were stern, and Uchiha Izuna, who was controlling Ishigamihara's body, seemed to have expected this to happen, and his expression became more serious. Then he made hand seals, and his figure suddenly rose. Susanoo, who was originally only half-body, quickly had armor transformed by Chakra on his body to resist the invasion of the poisonous fog from the outside. Looking around, there was a fog all around. In the nearby places, bubbles had begun to emerge from the water surface at some point. After the bubbles burst, purple poisonous fog was also splashed out. In other words, everything visible to the naked eye in this area has been infected with poison. Whoosh! A blazing flame suddenly rose up, like a pillar of fire that shot up into the sky, starting from the huge half-body statue of Susanoo and spreading to the surroundings. Until this moment, Ishigamihara's voice came from the pillar of fire. Fire-style, scorching tornado wave. This is a fire-style ninjutsu that the Uchiha clan is good at. It is mostly used to deal with people from Miss Shinobi. It is just right to use it at this time. The fire wave broke through the poisonous fog, followed by a blazing fire falling from the sky. To be precise, it was a long sword condensed from chakra and flames, held by the Susanoo bust and chopped. Under the huge wind pressure, it directly split the poisonous fog, and a huge blade also chopped towards Hans of the Salamander at the same time. Hans of the Salamander's response was simple. While controlling the salamander to retreat, the summoning bee salamander flicked its tail and whipped a huge rock out of the water. The diameter of the rock was no less than 10 meters, and it rushed straight towards the Susanoo bust like a cannonball with a roar. The battle here was extremely fierce, but Uchiha Madara, who was hiding in the dark, could no longer control his shock at this moment. He stared at the Susanoo bust, the three Magatama in his eyes spinning rapidly, and his face was struggling. It's Izuna. It's really Izuna. In his excitement, even his own chakra fluctuated rapidly. Among the two people fighting in the field, Ishigamihara paused as he was about to make a move. Confusion flashed in his eyes, but then it was replaced by ecstasy. He turned around subconsciously and looked in one direction. Ishigamihara, no. To be precise, it was Uchiha Izuna who controlled Ishigamihara's body. At this moment, his sight passed through the battlefield and met the sight of Uchiha Madara hiding in the dark. He saw the scarlet Sharingan and the face that he was very familiar with. Brother, the voice just came out, and it stopped abruptly in the next moment. Bang! The boulder hit the Susanoo bust directly, knocking the ladder out dozens of meters before stopping. The shaken Susanoo bust flickered, only because the control of the body at this moment was forcibly deprived by Ishigamihara, and Uchiha Izuna's chakra was also cut off. The bust of Susanoo on the body completely disappeared, revealing Ishigamihara himself, who now frowned and looked solemn. No, damn brat. Uchiha Izuna roared like crazy in Ishigamihara's mind. Quick, go find him. That's my big brother. Definitely my big brother. He's not dead yet. Ha ha ha. My big brother is still alive. Ha ha ha. Then there was a string of crazy laughter, which showed how excited Uchiha Izuna was at the moment. So that even though his chakra was cut off by Ishigamihara, chakra was still emerging on Ishigamihara's body. Ishigamihara didn't care about that at all, and with a flash of his body, he had already retreated in another direction. Ball, where do you want to escape to? Hans of the Salamander would not miss this good opportunity, and thought that Ishigamihara's chakra was running out of steam, and now was a good time to chase him. Ishigamihara snorted coldly, and without caring about anything else, he clasped his hands together, and his chakra also exploded at this moment. Wood-style, tree world birth. Crack, crack, crack. There seemed to be a moment of stillness in the field, but in the next moment, countless branches and seedlings broke out of the ground, as if stimulated by the eyes, and grew wildly at an incomprehensible speed. The branches turned into thick wood in an instant, winding and twisted, growing wantonly. In just a breath, they grew from seedlings to towering trees, and the growth did not stop at all. The fog around seemed to have become the nutrients for these countless trees at this moment. From the original thick to gradually thin, the whole process did not last more than 3 seconds. Ishigamihara stood on the thick wood. His figure rose as the trees grew, looking down at the Hans of the Salamander in front of him, and the summoning beast salamander tied by countless trees. His expression regained his composure again. This is impossible. Hans of the Salamander's eyes widened with anger, and at this moment, he was more panicked. How could it be with style? Impossible. Uchiha Madara, who was hiding in the dark, was also shocked, but at this time, Uchiha Madara looked extremely gloomy. 046 The special changes of the white eyes with style, a bloodline limit, has a special status in the ninja world. Anyone who has heard of Wood Style will probably have similar thoughts when they see the scene after Wood Style is performed. How to deal with it? This is what Hans of the Salamander really thinks at this moment. It is because Wood Style represents Senju Hashirama, the power used by the god of ninja to pacify the ninja world. It is a power that no one can reach, especially a powerful existence like Hans of the Salamander. Being called the demigod of the ninja world, Hans of the Salamander is powerful, but as powerful as he is more aware of the gap between himself and the legendary one. And now, the power belonging to that person is vividly displayed before his eyes. At this moment, within a radius of 2 kilometers, it has been covered by a dense forest. The vegetation in this forest is extremely lush, especially the various thick trees winding and twisting like long dragons, showing unparalleled vitality, which is extremely shocking. Under this kind of power, even Hans of the Salamander was shocked and could not control his mentality. No! Hans of the Salamander shouted, and felt like his eyes were about to burst, especially under his perception. Many of his subordinates, nearly half of them, were killed in this forest. If you look closely, it is not difficult to find that among those rough woods, there are places stained with bloodline from time to time, or some places have rotten meat-like residues, which is frightening. It was originally a forest full of vitality, but at this moment it became a death hell that harvested lives, which was enough to show the horror of this technique. Ishigamihara looked down from above, clasped his hands together to maintain the operation of Chakra, ignoring the crazy shouting of Uchiha Izuna in his mind, just glanced at Hans of the Salamander and looked in another direction. There, a figure that had been there had disappeared. It was unknown when it happened, but Ishigamihara knew it clearly in his heart. The person he had just seen must be Uchiha Madara, otherwise Uchiha Izuna would not be so excited. Little devil, go find him. Uchiha Izuna was still shouting in his mind, and his emotions seemed particularly excited. It seemed that he wanted to snatch control of Ishigamihara's body right now, so that he could go to see his brother whom he missed day and night. But Ishigamihara's response to this was quite cold. He didn't even respond, and then he retracted his gaze. Ishigamihara didn't know why Uchiha Madara came here, but one thing was certain: it must be related to him. In this case, Ishigamihara only needed to wait and didn't need to do too much. Feeling that more than half of the chakra in his body has been consumed, Ishigamihara felt a little helpless. Even if he has learned with style, he still cannot compare with Senju Hashirama in chakra. The gap between the two in this regard is still huge. So Ishigamihara just wants to get rid of the enemy in front of him at this moment, whether it is killing or repelling, as long as he can complete the task. In the field, the ranged shinobi side is already scared at this time. The growth of the wood-style forest soaring into the sky has made the rain shinobi ninjas feel terrified from the moment it appeared. There was even a moment when they thought that the god of ninja world was reborn. Ishigamihara stared at Hans of the Salamander in the distance below with a calm expression. For some reason, Ishigamihara at this moment inexplicably felt that his eyes had changed a little. This change is a bit unclear, but if you feel it carefully, you can feel it accurately. Specifically, when Uchiha Izuna controlled his body to fight, Ishigamihara felt the eye technique belonging to Uchiha Izuna. It is not quite accurate to say that he felt it. The correct statement is that he was mastered by Ishigamihara. Ishigamihara feels this way now. In addition to Uchiha Izuna and Kasagami, he has 2 more eye techniques. One is Amaterasu, and the other is Mizugami. The former is Amaterasu Black Flame, while the latter is eye technique that controls the body with the mind. Specifically, when the body is damaged, the mind can be used to replace the transformation, and when the mind is damaged, the body can also be used to supplement it. It is an extremely practical eye technique, which is somewhat similar to the damage transfer of Kasagami. The difference is that Kasagami can replace its own damage with illusions into different realities to complete the damage transfer. Mizugami can only use his own mind and body as the conversion target, which is less applicable than Kasagami. As for why Uchiha Izuna, who possessed the power of Mitsu God, died at the hands of Senju Tobarama, it can only be said that Senju Tobarama was too familiar with Uchiha. To be precise, Senju Tobarama was too familiar with Uchiha Izuna's weaknesses. Ishigamihara had also asked Uchiha Izuna why he died, but it was obvious that Uchiha Izuna would not answer this question for Ishigamihara, and the fact was that it was a reverse scale that could not be mentioned for Uchiha Izuna at this time. If you look closely at this moment, you can find that Ishigamihara's left eye has changed significantly from the past. The base color of his left eye is still pure white, which looks like a white eye, but outside the pupil, the part of the iris has a dark triangular lock pattern, which is the legacy of Uchiha Izuna's pupil power. And this remaining eye power is now actually mastered by Ishigamihara. It is incredible to say. Even Ishigamihara finds it hard to believe at this moment. So, Ishigamihara moved his mind, the eye power of his left eye was activated, and he released a pupil technique towards Hans of the Salamander. Swish! Hans of the Salamander did not hesitate and retreated instantly. At this moment, he saw a dark flame appear at the original position. Roar! The huge salamander felt the burning pain on its head, struggled hard, and shook its head, but seemed to be useless. The black flame was like a maggot on the tarsal bone, always burning on the salamander's head. Damn it! Seeing this scene, Hans of the Salamander clenched his fists. 047 Hans of the Salamander's decision without any delay. Hans of the Salamander could only strike hard, cutting off the flame on the top of the salamander's head, along with a large piece of flesh and blood on the top of the salamander's head. Ow! The salamander felt even more pain, and its huge body twisted wildly, as if trying to relieve the pain. Oomph! Hans of the Salamander snorted coldly, staring at Ishigamihara, and made a seal with his other hand, releasing the summoning technique, and the salamander disappeared into white smoke with a bang. At this moment, Hans of the Salamander stretched out from the forest where the tree world was born and could already feel the specialness of the forest. His own chakra began to drain faintly, as if there was something special around him, devouring his chakra. The tree world descent is actually more used to trap and search for enemies. The technique is activated by the caster's chakra. When the chakra is cut off, the forest created by the technique will still absorb energy from the outside, but the energy needed at this time needs to be provided by others, and this provider is undoubtedly the enemies trapped in it. No matter from which aspect, the tree world descent is an extraordinary ninjutsu, especially the wide range of the technique. In the past, when Senju Hashirama performed this technique, it basically meant the end of a battle. At this moment, this kind of thing is also true for Ishigamihara. Hans of the Salamander has already thought about retreating, knowing that if this battle continues, it is impossible to win. Not to mention the heavy casualties, the summoning beast was also severely injured. Although he did it himself, the defeat was already determined, and he was unable to revolving heaven. Especially at this moment, he himself was still trapped in it, and the crisis had not been resolved. If he did not leave, the consequences might be even more serious. I'll remember you, kid. After saying that, Hans of the Salamander raised 2 fingers, obviously planning to evacuate. But Ishigamihara would not let him do that. The pattern in the Sharingan in his right eye rotated rapidly, and the Ushikami was activated silently. Hans of the Salamander's expression changed, and his body suddenly shifted to one side. Ishigamihara frowned, then let go, and his right eye felt slightly sour. At some point, a piece of flesh and blood appeared in his hand, but it was not Hans of the Salamander's heart, but a large piece of flesh and blood on his chest and left arm. Looking at Hans of the Salamander again, his body had just stabilized, and he groaned, and a large piece of flesh and blood from his left chest to his shoulder had disappeared, revealing his sternum and a large piece of shoulder blade, and blood flowed down. The next moment, with Hans of the Salamander in pain, his body exploded with a bang, and turned into white smoke and disappeared. Seeing this, Ishigamihara gently stroked his right eye. The consumption of his pupil power at that moment was a bit intense. Ushikami failed, but can also be said to be successful. The failure was due to Hans of the Salamander's sudden reaction. The special induction after a long battle saved his life and allowed him to avoid Ushikami's inevitable death at the last moment. The success was because Ishigamihara activated his pupil power when he saw Hans of the Salamander's reaction and forcibly used Ushikami, who had already failed, so that he could tear off such a large piece of flesh and blood from his chest. In short, Hans of the Salamander was seriously injured, but in fact he did not suffer much loss. It was nothing more than some consumption of chakra and loss of some flesh and blood. With his identity, he had many ways to recover, but the man was unexpectedly decisive, and he left quite cleanly. The method he used was beyond Ishigamihara's expectation, which was reverse summoning. It was really unexpected. Shaking his head, Ishigamihara looked in the direction he came from and disappeared from the spot in a flash. After Hans of the Salamander left, those ranged shinobi ninjas who were lucky enough not to die in the tree world also fled early. In this regard, Ishigamihara did not choose to pursue. He wanted to kill all the scattered cloud shinobi ninjas with his own strength. Ishigamihara could do it, but it was not wise. What if Hans of the Salamander came back and raided the Konoha camp when Ishigamihara was chasing these people? Then Ishigamihara's actions today would be in vain. Although Hans of the Salamander left decisively and seemed to be seriously injured, he obviously still had some strength left. The title of demigod in the ninja world was not for nothing. Even a normal genin would have some means to temporarily suppress such injuries. Therefore, it was necessary to let those people escape. He made a few gestures from a distance, which were Konoha's unique communication gestures. Sure enough, after just a few breaths, several figures landed not far away and came out, and then quickly came to Ishigamihara. Among the people who came were Orochimaru and Nawaki, and 2 ninja teams, a total of 10 people. After these people arrived, they all looked at the huge forest with disbelief, especially Nawaki, who looked at Ishigamihara with disbelief in his eyes. Is this with style? My grandfather's with style. It's no wonder Nawaki reacted like this. With style, that was the power he had dreamed of since he was a child, but now it appeared in someone who was not a senju. Even though Nawaki had repeatedly overestimated Ishigamihara's strength, he never thought that one day he would see the wood style reappear from him. The expressions of the others were actually similar. After being shocked, they reacted with ecstasy. It's with style, it's really with style. Incredible, Shodai's power has appeared again. Konoha will definitely win. Orochimaru licked his lips and looked Ishigamihara up and down carefully, with a strong sense of surprise in his voice. You are really worthy of it, Harakun. You can always shock people, and this time is no exception. Ishigamihara shook his head, his expression normal. It's a pity that Hans of the Salamander escaped. Orochimaru's face froze slightly, and then he recovered. He is Orochimaru, one of the Sannin, a ninja who escaped from Hans of the Salamander. This Sannin is the title given to the 3 of them by Hans of the Salamander after he spared their lives. It seems glorious, but it is actually a shame. But Ishigamihara in front of him forced Hans of the Salamander to flee. The comparison between the numbers is self-evident. 048, the beginning of the great changes in the ninja world, go after him. After a long silence, Orochimaru gave this order dryly. Immediately, the 2 team members brought by Orochimaru responded in a low voice and disappeared one by one, chasing after ranged shinobi's retreat. With such a result, it is natural to pursue further. Even if there will not be much merit, what should be done must be done. This is a major event to inspire the morale of the crowd, and it cannot be sloppy. Orochimaru and Nawaki, on the other hand, are a little silent at this moment. The former is because of Ishigamihara's words. Compared with himself, he found that he, a senior, seemed to have nothing to praise in front of him. The latter, on the other hand, was more frightened by the huge forest and rough wood, and was still in shock. This shock also contained some bitterness that ordinary people could not understand. Why is it not me who awakened with style? I am the grandson of the first generation and the heir of the Senju clan. As if sensing Nawaki's inner emotions, Orochimaru gently patted Nawaki's shoulder, but did not say much. Ishigamihara, looking at the depressed Nawaki, smiled slightly. Nawaki, the latter looked up, his expression slightly confused. Are you envious? Ishigamihara asked. What? Nawaki was startled, and then his face was a little erratic, and his words were not so firm. How could it be? It's nothing. I'm just happy for you. Want to learn? I'll teach you. Ishigamihara's next words made Orochimaru and Nawaki stunned, especially the latter, who widened his eyes in disbelief. Really? Ishigamihara smiled and nodded. Orochimaru smiled, couldn't help licking his lips, and patted Nawaki's shoulder again, and didn't say anything again. But this time the meaning was completely different. After Nawaki reacted, his expression was very pleasantly surprised. Are you serious? Ishigamihara nodded again, and then said, I have mastered with style. This bloodline is no longer a secret to me. He glanced at Orochimaru, and then stared at Nawaki and said, You have the bloodline of the first generation, and you have 5 attributes. Although it is difficult to learn with style, it is not impossible. Orochimaru's smile faded. He could feel the meaning of Ishigamihara's gaze. He was silent for a while, and then turned his eyes to the side. Ishigamihara's meaning was very simple. That is, to tell Orochimaru clearly that he could not learn with style bloodline. At least it was impossible at this stage. Do you want to say that Orochimaru wants to master with style? That must be what he wants, at least Orochimaru at this stage does. But his identity does not allow him to have too many ideas at this time. Thinking of this, Orochimaru couldn't help but feel helpless. He was really despicable to be seen through by a young man. Great! Nawaki was extremely excited, grabbing Ishigamihara's shoulders, jumping and jumping, showing the nature of a young man. In the dark of a valley, there was a roar, and a man smashed the big rock beside him, letting the stone chips fly, and his eyes were scarlet, with anger and anxiety in them. Damn it! This person is naturally Uchiha Madara, who left the battlefield early. He came here to see Ishigamihara, a special existence who opened the double bloodline of the Byakugan and Sharingan. Unexpectedly, he saw an incredible scene from him. His younger brother Izuna is in that person. With Uchiha Madara's vision and knowledge, even if he didn't know what happened, he would not mistake the power of his younger brother Uchiha Izuna. The one who fought with Hans of the Salamander at the beginning was definitely Izuna, not the boy. But in the end, when Uchiha Madara looked at the other party, Izuna disappeared. No, to be precise, Izuna was deprived of control of the other party's body. It was from that moment that Uchiha Madara was truly sure that the solemnity in the eyes at the end of the eye contact was not Izuna, but the boy himself. In other words, his younger brother, whose soul was trapped in the body by the other party in some unknown way, could still drive the other party's power. This was unacceptable to Uchiha Madara. For a moment, Uchiha Madara wanted to stand up directly, but he held back. For his own plan, Uchiha Madara did not act rashly. But the more he did so, the more angry he became, like a burning fire that burned his internal organs like smoke, and he was furious. No one could understand the relationship between Uchiha Madara and his younger brother Izuna. It was a strong family affection and bond under the joint battle and mutual support. It was a sincere relationship that could not be tarnished by others. But now, Izuna, who died for Uchiha, was trapped in the body of that little devil, like being trapped in a prison. How could he accept this? White Zetsu, with a light shout, a pale figure stumbled from his side. Big, man, Lord Madara, I didn't provoke you, don't kill me. White Zetsu shouted. Shut up. Uchiha Madara suddenly turned around and stared at White Zetsu, who quickly covered his mouth. Taking a deep breath, Uchiha Madara said in a heavy voice, Go find a location of Rock Shinobi's 2 Jinchuriki and come back to tell me. Then go and give Hans of the Salamander a gift and give him the flesh and blood. Yes, Lord Madara. And Uchiha Madara looked at the sky, suppressed his anger, took a deep breath and pondered for a while, then said, "Pass the information here to the people of Cloud Shinobi. I will go to Miss Shinobi in person." Hee, Lord Madara, if this happens, Konoha will be in trouble. White Zetsu asked with a smile. Go and do it. Understood, Lord Madara. White Zetsu took the order and left, jumping up and down. Uchiha Madara glanced at the battlefield again. The Sharingan 3 Magatama in his eyes turned slightly, and then his figure flashed and disappeared. A moment later, a figure appeared here, with long fiery red hair fluttering in the wind, and 3 Magatama looming in the left eye, and then condensed into a triangular lock pattern, and then stabilized. Sure enough, he has left. In the body, the chakra belonging to Uchiha Izuna was vibrating, because Uchiha Izuna felt the special remnant of the breath here, which was the breath of his brother Uchiha Madara. Don't worry, I will let you meet, but not now. Ishigamihara looked in a direction, which should be the direction where Uchiha Madara left, but he did not intend to continue to pursue it. Also, thank you for the power you brought. I will cherish it. While speaking, the pattern in the white eye completely disappeared, as if it had never appeared, and no matter how Uchiha Izuna's chakra was agitated, it had no effect at all. As for the various voices of Uchiha Izuna in his head, Ishigamihara simply chose to ignore them. 049, taking a step to change the ninja world if the relationship between Ishigamihara and Uchiha Izuna had been stable before. Then after this incident, Ishigamihara's attitude towards Uchiha Izuna was no longer the same as before, but he regarded him as an unstable factor and became alert. Ishigamihara's methods included, but were not limited to cutting off the connection between his chakra and his body, and using sealing techniques to completely seal his chakra. And by the way, cutting off his 5 senses, completely sealing him up by using himself as a container. Now Uchiha Izuna can no longer sense the outside world and can no longer observe the outside world through Ishigamihara. Except for still existing in Ishigamihara's body, he is basically no different from a dead person. As for why Ishigamihara did not completely expel him, it is also very simple. Ishigamihara just wanted to wait for this person to be useful one day. Calm down. There will be a day when you will meet Uchiha Madara. But when that day comes, I hope you won't resent me. After saying this, Ishigamihara completely cut off the last trace of chakra connection between him and Uchiha Izuna. Kid, you will regret it, you. The voice stopped abruptly, and the noise in his ears finally stopped. Shaking his head, Ishigamihara looked in that direction. His eyes flickered a few times and then turned and left. After a big battle, the dejected atmosphere in the Konoha camp was suddenly cleared, and everyone recognized Ishigamihara, a young man who had a great reputation in Konoha. It was because Ishigamihara used with style on the battlefield. This was the blood of the first Hokage and the power to quell the unrest in the ninja world. His appearance here at this time gave people a shocking feeling and also brought confidence to the people of Konoha. Wood style is equivalent to victory, which is basically a fact recognized by Konoha and even the ninja world. Ishigamihara could sense the eagerness in the eyes of others when they looked at him. If it weren't for his special identity, everyone in Konoha would have wanted to come forward and have a good exchange with him. 6 days later, Ishigamihara led a team to patrol to ensure that ranged shinobi would not attack again. Although anyone with a discerning eye could see that ranged shinobi was no longer able to continue after the last battle, the necessary precautions were still necessary. What really made Konoha alert was the threat from rock shinobi. The war here could not be kept secret. With such a large forest, anyone who was not blind could see it. If ranged shinobi suffered heavy losses and rock shinobi and rain shinobi joined forces, it would not necessarily be a good thing for Konoha at this time. So during the patrol missions of the past few days, Ishigamihara and the team members focused more on rock shinobi. There were no accidents in the 6 days, and everything seemed very calm. However, Ishigamihara felt that this was the calm before the storm. A heavy pressure was brewing in secret, and no one knew what would happen next. In the camp, Jiraiya had recovered a lot and was walking around now. I believed that he would be able to recover his combat power in a few days. As for Tsunade, after learning that Ishigamihara had awakened the wood style, he finally responded. Although he was not fully excited, he found Ishigamihara as soon as possible. Tsunade, have a good rest. Leave the war to us. These were Ishigamihara's original words. He did not talk to Tsunade for too long, but just made a promise to him. I will try my best to teach Nawaki the wood style, just like Grandma Mito taught me the sealing technique. Even if there's a 1 in 10,000 chance, I will ensure that Nawaki can master the wood style. Tsunade was naturally moved. She was not familiar with Ishigamihara. In the past, she had only heard of Ishigamihara's existence and knew that there was such a person. But when Ishigamihara entered the battlefield and fully demonstrated his talent, Tsunade knew that Ishigamihara would be a powerful figure in the ninja world in the future. It was a great thing for Konoha and Nawaki that her brother could become friends with such a powerful ninja. As a sister, she was naturally happy to see it, which was also human nature. But Lord Tsunade, there's one thing you need to plan as soon as possible. Tsunade was puzzled, but still asked solemnly, just tell me, don't hide it. Ishigamihara told Nawaki about his experience on the way to the Sand Shinobi front battlefield. As expected, Tsunade immediately frowned, and there was a hint of obvious anger on his face. I understand. Don't tell anyone about this. I will solve it. The conversation between the two ended here. Ishigamihara was trying to please some people in the village. Tsunade also knew what Ishigamihara meant, but she didn't mind going back to express her thoughts. That was enough. Ishigamihara did this not without special intentions. His idea was actually very simple. After agreeing to Uzumaki Mito, Ishigamihara began to deliberately strive for his reputation in the village. Reputation may seem insignificant, but it is still quite useful for people in a certain political system. Uzumaki Mito expected Ishigamihara to establish a complete bond with the village, and Ishigamihara had no intention of betraying Konoha, so it became inevitable to strive for enough benefits for himself. The bond with the village can be established, but Ishigamihara does not intend to establish a bond with the village as a low-ranking person. If there is a choice, Ishigamihara would rather be the chess player. It was a very simple and straightforward truth. Whether it was Hokage Sarutobi Hiruzen or other advisors in the village, they all thought that sending Ishigamihara to the battlefield was to train him into a qualified ninja and hone him into an obedient knife. However, they did not know that they had released a real dragon that could change the situation in the ninja world. When Ishigamihara returned to Konoha with unparalleled reputation, I think the expressions of some people in the village would be very exciting. To accomplish all this, you need strong power, and Ishigamihara is not lacking in power now, and he is not yet fully grown. His potential is unparalleled. Let's start all this from the war to defeat Rock Shinobi. Yes, after half a month of silence, Rock Shinobi finally couldn't hold back and took action. As Ishigamihara expected, Rock Shinobi and Rain Shinobi joined forces, and a full-scale war was about to break out. And on this day, Ishigamihara walked out of the camp. 050 face-to-face with Uchiha. The land of Earth is in the north, the land of Rain is in the west, and the power of Konoha is now concentrated on the east side of the land of Rain. Rock Shinobi and Rain Shinobi cooperate, and the two can go south and bring great pressure to Konoha. Not to mention that there is also Cloud Shinobi ready to move. The pressure on Konoha can be imagined. Now for Konoha, for Hokage Sarutobi Hiruzen. The most important thing is to preserve the results of the First Ninja World War and ensure that they can still maintain their position as the first in the ninja world. So war is inevitable, and winning is the only option. To be precise, the pressure faced by Konoha in the Land of Rain is definitely greater than that faced by Sand Shinobi. This requires someone to stand up at this time to resist the confluence of Rock Shinobi and Rain Shinobi. There is no doubt that the only one who can do this at this moment is Ishigamihara. After all, with the Byakugan and Sharingan and the awakened wood style, Ishigamihara's combat power is undoubtedly strong. Even though Ishigamihara is still a teenager and has not really grown up, he still has to take on this responsibility. For others, this huge pressure may cause an imbalance in their mentality. But in Ishigamihara's view, this time point and external environment are exactly what he wants. Rain Shinobi and Rock Shinobi acted quickly, and the battle broke out very directly. Both of them were determined to defeat Konoha in one fell swoop. So the attack was very fierce at the beginning. On the east side of the Rain Country, more than 10 kilometers away from the Konoha camp, there was a cloud of smoke and dust on the battlefield. Water-style water dragon bomb technique. Earth-style earth flowing wall. Fire-style great fireball technique. All kinds of ninjutsu were flying. Roars and fighting sounds were endless. The battlefield was noisy. Everywhere was the light brought by ninjutsu or bursts of roars, and there were even cries representing death. This was not the first attack of Rock Shinobi and Rain Shinobi. In 5 days, the two organized 3 consecutive attacks, and each one was more fierce than the last. Until this time, Rock Shinobi even released a big killer. Roar, a shocking roar. The sound was like thunder, shaking all directions, and then a huge monster suddenly appeared on the battlefield. It was a huge creature with a body as red as fire, like an ape, more like a gorilla, with 5 thick tails behind it, fangs in its mouth, hideous face, beating its chest, and roaring to the sky. That is a tailed beast. How could it be? On the battlefield, the ninjas of Konoha were in high spirits, but when they saw the appearance of the tailed beast, their faces suddenly changed. The tailed beast represents destruction and death. Its huge body, terrifying chakra, and powerful ability are definitely not comparable to a single ninja. Seeing this, the ninjas of Konoha were only afraid. Damn it, it's 4 tails. Why did it appear here? As a commander of the battlefield, Orochimaru's face changed after seeing this scene, and he was extremely angry. Do you want to retreat? Orochimaru, on the side, Jiraiya, who had recovered a lot, stood beside him and looked at the tailed beast with a serious look. Orochimaru looked very serious, gritted his teeth slightly, but still shook his head. No, with Haruko in here, we still have hope. As long as he can hold back the tailed beasts, this battle can still be fought. As soon as the voice fell, countless saplings suddenly grew where 4 tails was, and then grew rapidly, as if time was accelerated. Wood-style, tree world birth. Ishigamihara broke away from the battlefield, faced the powerful pressure of 4 tails, and performed wood-style. Crack, crack, crack. Countless thick trees grew up, and in the process of growing, they were like vines entwining towards 4 tails. The latter roared and struggled hard. Under his movements, the thick wood was as fragile as a rope, and it would break if it was slightly broken. But it broke away quickly, and the trees grew and entwined faster. In order to deal with the tailed beasts, Ishigamihara did not care about the consumption of chakra. Fortunately, Wood-style already has the ability to know the tailed beasts, especially the powerful Wood-style ninjutsu, such as the Tree World Birth, which can absorb the tailed beast chakra to maintain the jutsu itself. So Ishigamihara's pressure is not too great. But as a tailed beast, it is naturally impossible to be subdued so easily. For Tail seemed to sense the crisis and opened his mouth wide, and all kinds of light gathered in front of him, colorful and magnificent. At this moment, a great pressure emanated from the light group that gradually gathered together. Everyone present was depressed, and Orochimaru, as the commander of the battlefield, was even more shocked. No, it's Tailed Beast Bomb. The ninjas who noticed this, whether Rock Shinobi, Rain Shinobi, or Konoha's people, all retreated quickly. Facing Tailed Beast Bomb, no one has the confidence to survive it. If Tailed Beast Bomb explodes, everyone present will be affected even slightly, and it is feared that it will not be good for a long time. Ishigamihara would not let him do what he wanted. Seeing this, his eyes flashed and his eyes changed. His left, I was in a white-based Byakugan state, but there was a triangular lock pattern on the iris. While his right, I was still a blood-red Sharingan. Manjiki appeared, and the pattern in his eye began to rotate rapidly. Amaterasu, a large piece of black flame, suddenly appeared in Four Tails' mouth, and the rapidly gathering chakra and natural energy were disordered because of the appearance of the black flame. The burning of the black flame also caused Four Tails severe pain. For a moment, the tailed beast bomb, which had already formed, suddenly collapsed and produced a large explosion. Boom! The explosion was like thunder, and Four Tails suddenly raised his head and let out a tragic roar, as if he had been severely injured. Ishigamihara knew very well that such an attack could not do anything to Four Tails, so he maintained the tree realm advent, making countless thick woods bind the tailed beasts, and raise his other hand high. The next moment, Chakra gathered in the palm of his hand, and in almost an instant, a group of chakra turned into a sphere, and then the sphere expanded rapidly until it expanded to a diameter of nearly 10 meters. Wind-style, super large raisin shuriken. Sizzle. A high-frequency buzzing sound appeared, and the huge chakra appeared with sharp edges around it, spinning rapidly, just like a shuriken. Ishigamihara had already seen through the essence of the Rasengan series of ninjutsu, so it would not be difficult to master it. It was nothing more than stacking chakra and special nature transformation, which Ishigamihara was good at. Without any hesitation, Ishigamihara threw the Raisin Shuriken in his hand before Four Tails could react. The battlefield was still for a moment, and under the gaze of everyone, the huge Raisin Shuriken shot out, bringing with it a violent wind pressure, and slammed into Four Tails. At this moment, a violent wind erupted from the place where the two came into contact, and a blazing light swept across the entire venue. The terrible wind pressure turned into sharp blades and instantly wrapped Four Tails. Roar, roar, roar! Four Tails screamed in pain, and the fur on his body was torn apart and instantly turned into chakra and dissipated. Boom! Amid the violent roar, Four Tails seemed unable to withstand this amazing blow and turned around and fled into the distance while the tree tied to his body was destroyed by the spiral shuriken. Ishigamihara frowned when he saw this. Although he felt that Four Tails' move was unusual, he had no time to think about it. He had to grasp the results of the battle, so he hurried to catch up. Boom! The huge Four Tails ran, bringing up billowing smoke and dust. Ishigamihara followed closely behind, not slow, and was not left behind too far. The two chased and fled, and soon left the battlefield. Four Tails ran for more than 10 kilometers before stopping, turning around to face Ishigamihara, who was chasing him, and his face became more ferocious. Something's wrong. Ishigamihara also stopped, frowning, and then seemed to feel something, suddenly turned his head and looked at another place. There, a figure sat cross-legged on a boulder. It was unknown when it appeared, but it seemed to exist there. Uchiha! Ishigamihara shouted, his brows furrowed. Uchiha opened his eyes. The scarlet color in his eyes penetrated through his hair, staring at Ishigamihara, but his face was full of arrogance, mixed with a strong, murderous intent. Little ghost, we finally meet. Adhere to originality and eliminate violations of commitment. Dajiafa, guarantee that the contracted work is my original work, and in the process of creation, I strictly follow the Feilu Writers' Convention to create, adhere to originality, and eliminate the following violations. If there are any violations, I am willing to bear all the consequences caused by it. 1. Guarantee that the contracted work is my original work, without plagiarism or plagiarism of the plot in the Chinese translation 2. Guarantee that no third-party works or plots are plagiarized in the creation process 3. Guarantee that the Feilu Novel Network is the first and only contracted website for the work 4. Guarantee to abide by the law in the creation process, including but not limited to no politics, no pornography, gambling, drugs, no propaganda of cults, no ghostwriting, no waste manuscripts, no trusteeship, no sale of works and accounts, etc. 5. Guarantee that no matter how many words the work has, the contracted work must have a complete plot, never a bad ending, and stop updating without completion. 51 Monster Imp and Ninja Shura Four Tails, who was originally violent, suddenly calmed down at this time, just standing there quietly, as if he had lost his mind. Ishigamihara glanced at him, and saw that the three Magatama belonging to Sharingan were looming in his dark eyes. He knew without guessing that Four Tails was controlled by illusion. In other words, from the appearance of Four Tails to the outbreak, and then to the escape, everything was to lure him here. Ishigamihara was a little surprised, but he thought it was natural. If he were Uchiha Madara, he would probably spend all his energy to eliminate this unstable factor at this time. Only in this way could he feel at ease. Little ghost, do you know me? Uchiha Madara was still sitting cross-legged on the big rock, wearing a red plate armor, with long hair covering half of his face. There were traces of time left on the plate armor, which was slightly Madara-like, but with Uchiha Madara's temperament, it was even more fierce. Seeing that Uchiha Madara did not attack directly and seemed to want to talk to him, Ishigamihara exhaled lightly, then raised the corner of his mouth and spoke with a smile. I saw you once in the last battle with Hans of the Salamander. Although I didn't see you at that time, I also recognized your identity. The former Shura of the ninja world, Uchiha Madara. Ha. Uchiha Madara laughed up to the sky, as if he had heard something very interesting, and then the laughter suddenly stopped, staring at Uchiha, and slowly stood up. Sure enough, that look is Izuna, right? Ishigamihara did not hide it and nodded gently. It is indeed him. Uchiha Madara did not say anything, but stared into Ishigamihara's eyes, as if he wanted to see the same look from last time in his eyes. But he was destined to be disappointed, because the look Ishigamihara gave him was very plain from beginning to end. You are not him. Uchiha Madara's voice was a little quiet. Ishigamihara looked calm, and he didn't seem to be worried about his situation. He just said lightly, I am Ishigamihara, that's all. Buzz. Uchiha Madara suddenly surged with air waves, and a huge pressure spread from his body. The pressure was like a substance that acted on Ishigamihara in an instant. That is the spirit of the Shura of the ninja world. At this moment, Ishigamihara felt that he was facing a mountain, and he seemed extremely small. But he was like a reef in the waves, and he stood still despite the strong wind and waves. Kid, you are very good. Seeing this, even Uchiha Madara couldn't help but praise him. Ishigamihara slowly drew out the short blade behind his waist. The friction between the blade and the scabbard was clearly visible here, as if it was not affected by the opponent's momentum at all. No need to say useless nonsense. After saying this, he rushed towards Uchiha Madara. Little boy, do you want to dance too? Uchiha Madara crossed his arms over his chest, seemingly not caring about Ishigamihara's performance at all, and even had admiration in his eyes. But the next moment, the light of Ishigamihara's knife appeared in front of him. Uchiha Madara narrowed his eyes slightly and did not see any big movements. He just slightly turned his body to avoid the attack, easily and naturally. The knife light was like a horse, but it suddenly bent at the moment of missing and went straight to Uchiha Madara's neck. Interesting. After making such a comment, Uchiha Madara finally raised his hand, took a step forward, and blocked Ishigamihara's wrist with his arm, and slapped his chest with his other hand. Ishigamihara's body was shorter than Uchiha Madara's, but at the same time, if he wanted to attack Ishigamihara's chest, Uchiha Madara had to bend down, which gave him an opportunity. Then Ishigamihara's free hand was also stretched out, and it was also slapped with Uchiha Madara. The two hands slapped together, and Uchiha Madara's mouth corners suddenly curled up, and with a force on his hand, he interlocked his 5 fingers with Ishigamihara's and kicked at the same time. Ishigamihara's reaction was naturally not bad. He jumped up lightly at this moment. He also used force on his hands. He actually used the power of Uchiha Madara to flip over his head and landed beside him. From beginning to end, the two people's hands never separated. At the moment of falling, they both puffed up their chests at the same time and then sprayed flames at each other. Fire style, great fire extinction. Without any difference, the two people used the same technique at the same time. They were so close that the flames instantly enveloped their bodies. It was during the rise and fall, just now, that Uchiha Madara used Ishigamihara's hand to complete the seal, and the latter also followed suit, and also used Uchiha Madara's hand completed the seal of this technique. Boom! Explosions sounded, and the flames shot up into the sky in an instant, engulfing the two people. Swoosh! The next moment, two figures flew out of the flames, still maintaining the posture of spewing flames from their mouths, and each retreated more than 10 meters. Two long, snake-like flames started from the two people, and then turned into a raging flame that collided with each other. The flames were like huge waves, surging endlessly, and the collision stirred up high waves, turning into a wall of fire that was more than 30 meters high, as if to burn everything. The flames burned for more than 10 seconds. In other words, the two people maintained this technique. It lasted for more than 10 seconds before stopping. The flames burned the air, causing it to distort. The big rock at the center of the flames had turned into lava and flowed away. See how terrible the power of the two spells was when they collided. Through the flames, the two people's sights collided, and the next moment, the two figures suddenly disappeared. Dang! In the flames, two figures flew and flashed, as if the picture skipped frames. Each time they appeared in a different place, but each time they appeared, there would be a burst of sparks. Dung 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 dung. The dense sound of metal clashing like a violent drumbeat sounded, but it was Ishigamihara's short blade collided with Uchiha Madara's kunai, and the two were competing in pure swordsmanship. The fancy swordsmanship, which was like a show of skill, was exactly the same in style, fierce and sharp, revealing the ultimate elegance, but accompanied by terrible lethality, as if someone would die on the spot if they were not careful. But neither Uchiha Madara nor Ishigamihara was afraid at all, and the two of them were engaged in the most intense collision on the battlefield, and no one retreated. Ha ha ha! Uchiha Madara let out a happy roar, his long hair flying, and his expression was extremely excited. Little boy, I will let you do it, this Uchiha-style swordsmanship. You have passed. Ishigamihara pursed his lips and said nothing. He hit a horizontal slash in his hand, but his body movements suddenly changed from the original gorgeous to the simple and plain. Every move he made revealed a sense of contradiction that was perfect but should be like this. What is this? Uchiha Madara's eyes were stern. He naturally noticed the change in Ishigamihara's movements. As time went by, he found that his attacks were actually falling into the rhythm of the opponent. How about 5.6? Ishigamihara spoke at this time and glanced at Uchiha Madara. His movements were sometimes fast and sometimes slow. His body stopped suddenly from time to time and then moved quickly. It seemed extremely contradictory, but it was in perfect harmony with the battle. This rhythm control, you won. Uchiha Madara narrowed his eyes, and naturally he would not force himself. He found that his swordsmanship, which he was proud of, was actually at a disadvantage in this pure competition. He was extremely surprised, but also inexplicably amazed. Monster, even as powerful as Uchiha Madara at this moment, had to admit that the monster in front of him was something he had never seen before. Swish! A flash of knife light pierced through the air, and at an extremely tricky angle, it slashed at Uchiha Madara's shoulder armor, leaving a mark. Whoosh! Uchiha Madara quickly retreated, putting some distance between himself and Ishigamihara, and the smile on his face could not be suppressed. He threw away the broken kunai and clapped his hands. Fire-style Haru fire technique. 052 complete Susanoo boom. A fire dragon suddenly rushed out from the ground in front of Ishigamihara, its mouth open wide, biting down on Ishigamihara's head. The dragon head had a diameter of more than 10 meters, which was really huge. The pressure coming from it caused the air around it to be distorted violently, which showed how hot it was. Ishigamihara was not afraid at all. He put the short blade back into the scabbard with one hand and completed the seal with the other hand. Water-style, turbulent water rush. It opened its mouth and spit out huge waves like thousands of troops, roaring and galloping, crashing into the huge dragon head. Boom! Amid the violent explosion, countless water vapors turned into shock waves and rushed around, almost swallowing up Uchiha Madara and Ishigamihara in an instant. Crash! The waves kept surging. In just a short moment, the battlefield was turned into a swamp, and even the valley was submerged, including half of the mountain. It was enough to see how wide the scope of this technique was. Ishigamihara and Uchiha Madara stepped on the water, and their bodies fluctuated with the waves. The two looked at each other from a distance, but their sight was not affected by the fog at all. They looked at each other. The next moment, the two rushed towards each other again. 11 this time, it was no longer a swordsmanship competition, but a pure physical technique. Uchiha Madara had a physical technique that stood at the top of the ninja world. It was a powerful technique forged by growing up and experiencing countless battles in Sengoku. Every move was full of unparalleled murderous intent. The swiftness of his movements and the fierceness of his murderous intent made him invincible. Ishigamihara was naturally not bad. He had accumulated a lot of experience and integrated the physical skills of the three tribes, Senju, Uzumaki, and even Uchiha, to build his own physical skills framework. His moves were naturally powerful. Every time the two collided, their energy was overflowing, and the splashes of water and waves were endless. If Ishigamihara could suppress Uchiha Madara, a strong swordsman, with his unique rhythm, then he would be at a disadvantage in the physical skills collision. The reason was nothing but the height difference between the two. After all, Ishigamihara was still young and shorter than Uchiha Madara. Even if he was no worse in strength, this difference would give Uchiha Madara a slight advantage every time. This advantage was nothing for others, but for Uchiha Madara, he could seize any opportunity at any time and gradually magnify this advantage until he finally crushed him. This is the ability of the Shura of the ninja world. Ishigamihara naturally also noticed this. So after being suppressed by Uchiha Madara again with his height, he simply retreated and left the battle. "What's wrong, kid? Don't want to continue." Uchiha Madara was full of smiles. The battle just now made him seem very happy, and naturally he didn't want to end it like this. Ishigamihara stared at the other party, and then said, "Don't waste time, let's start." Uchiha Madara heard the words, and his smile faded. He looked at Ishigamihara for a moment, and then nodded. "Okay, come on." The two of them fought to this point, and in fact they all knew that whether it was swordsmanship or physical skills, it was just a test. For the two of them, the real battle has just begun. They saw the two of them put their hands together at the same time and then shouted softly, "Wood style, tree world birth." Coincidentally, both of them planned to use wood style to put pressure on the other party, but it happened that both of them were good at wood style or other ninjutsu. Snap, snap, snap. Countless saplings grew from the water, swelled in the wind, and in just a few breaths, they grew into towering trees, entwined with each other like countless vines. The two stood on a thick tree. Their bodies rose as the trees grew, facing each other from a distance. The area within a radius of 4 or 5 kilometers has now turned into a dense forest. There are big trees everywhere in this forest, and the trees overlap and twist with strange shapes. If you look closely, it is not difficult to find that the wood-style trees belonging to Uchiha Madara are slightly dark in color. The wood-style trees belonging to Ishigamihara are more like the tree species that already exist in nature. There's a certain difference between the two in this respect, and it is easy to distinguish. In other aspects, there is no difference between the two. The wood styles of both sides are in each other, which has formed this twisted forest. In fact, it is more than that. The trees born from the two tree worlds are still devouring each other's chakra. In this regard, Ishigamihara has a certain advantage. If nothing else, it is only because his wood style is more pure, which is derived from the inheritance of Senju Hashirama, and his own awakening of wood style is also due to Senju Hashirama's chakra. As for Uchiha Madara's wood style, it is because of Hashirama's cells, which can only be regarded as mastered, and the essence of it is naturally different from Ishigamihara. To be precise, the reason why Uchiha Madara's wood style could reach this level was more because of the strong chakra that Uchiha Madara used. Uchiha Madara saw this scene, and his mind moved. For Tails, who had been standing still in the distance, suddenly opened their mouths. A huge amount of chakra quickly gathered, and at the same time attracted natural energy and quickly condensed into a huge sphere with an 8-to-2 structure. Tail Beast Bomb had already taken shape, and the speed was much faster than on the battlefield. The next moment, buzz. The air seemed to stagnate for a moment, and then the tailed beast bomb was seen like a cannonball, shooting towards Ishigamihara's position. Wherever it passed, the ground was plowed into deep gullies, and all the trees were turned into dust and disappeared, leaving only a trace of more than 10 meters along the way. Even so, it was because the tailed beast bomb did not touch the ground. Feeling the terrible pressure, Ishigamihara's face became solemn. He glanced at Uchiha Madara, and then his mind moved, and the Mangeki pattern in his eyes suddenly turned. The next moment, Ishigamihara's body was filled with light red chakra, which turned into skeleton, muscle, and skin. Then, outside the skin, there was an armor shape, cloud shoulders, neck cape, chest guard, waist guard, skirt armor, and a helmet with red tassels. A huge armored giant appeared on the battlefield. Seeing this, Uchiha Madara narrowed his eyes slightly. 017, Susanoo in full form? Can a child use the stone flower basket to this extent? The next moment, the huge armored giant had a long sword in his hand. He held the sword with both hands, exerted force on his feet, and ran towards the tailed beast bomb. Wow! A red blade light appeared, and Ishigamihara's Susanoo directly crashed into tailed beast bomb. The moment the two met, he chopped down with a blade. "Huh!" Ishigamihara shouted, and the blade light was as red as blood. Then, tailed beast bomb split in the middle, split into two halves, flew past Susanoo on both sides, landed farther behind, and fell on the ground, bursting out two blazing lights. Boom! A violent sound like the collapse of the sky, and the earth came, followed by a terrible gust of wind. After doing all this, Susanoo turned around, raised her hand, and pointed the long sword directly at Uchiha Madara. "Ha ha!" Uchiha Madara laughed loudly, and without seeing any movement, the light blue chakra gathered on the surface of his body, just like Ishigamihara, with a skeleton, flesh, and armor. In less than 2 breaths, a giant as tall as Ishigamihara's Susanoo appeared not far away. The two faced each other from a distance, and the atmosphere was extremely solemn. "Come on, kid, fight to your heart's content." The next moment, the two Susanoos collided with each other, and a violent roar broke out. The earth shook, the ground rolled, and a terrible wind swept in all directions like a storm. 053, the wooden golem is better than the 4 tails. The battle between the two giants was so far away that it was shocking. Even though they were far apart, the aftermath could still be felt on the battlefield where range shinobi and rock shinobi were fighting against Konoha, especially the vibration of the ground, which no one could ignore. The roars from time to time in the distance directly overwhelmed the shouts and screams on the battlefield here, and even a strong wind blew, which made people tremble. What happened? On the Konoha side, Orochimaru and Jiraiya had just defeated a Genin group. After a moment of respite, Jiraiya couldn't help but ask. Orochimaru licked his cracked lips, glanced at the direction where the aftermath of the vibration came from, and couldn't help grinning. It should be the battle between Harukoin and 4 tails. If we can restrict 4 tails, we can win this battle. Haha, you don't need to say that. Jiraiya laughed when he heard this, and seemed quite excited. It was naturally a happy thing for Jiraiya to have such a younger generation in the village. "Then go ahead," Orochimaru said. "Okay." Jiraiya took a deep breath, and without further ado, he bit his finger. Summoning technique. Boom. 2 huge monsters suddenly appeared in the field, a purple snake and a giant toad holding a knife. As soon as the 2 summoning beasts appeared, they brought a huge momentum boost to Konoha, especially when the 2 summoning beasts cooperated with Orochimaru and Jiraiya to start fighting. The help they brought to Konoha was obvious. The roars on the battlefield stopped, the vibrations continued, and screams were everywhere. But the movement here would be drowned out by the loud noises from afar from time to time, which shows that the fighting here is completely incomparable to the battlefield in the distance. Boom, boom, boom. A violent explosion sounded, and the roar was accompanied by flames rising to the sky. 2 giants, one red and one blue, collided with each other on the ground, and from time to time, accompanied by flames and explosions, everything around was torn into pieces. The forest, which originally covered a large area, was now in tatters, and even Ishigamihara met Uchiha. The top of Madara Mountain had already shrunk by half at this moment, turning into huge rocks and fragments that collapsed everywhere. The smoke and dust in the field rolled, but were quickly blown away by the aftermath of the battle. To be precise, it was not a battle between two giants, one red and one blue, but a red Susanoo fighting one against two, and Four Tails was also fighting against it. Roar, roar, roar. Four Tails roared to the sky and opened his mouth to spit out huge balls of magma-like substances, which turned into sharp arrows and attacked the red Susanoo. The red Susanoo held a knife in one hand and swung it fiercely, slashing out a terrible slash, easily cutting through the air in the mountain and even annihilating all those attacks. Then the huge figure rushed towards Four Tails. The body that should have looked clumsy was surprisingly agile, but it appeared in front of Four Tails in just a few shakes. The knife slashed down with a terrible edge, as if it was going to cut the space open. Four Tails wanted to dodge, but it was too late, so he had to raise his arms. Then one of his arms was cut off by this amazing knife. He let out a shocking roar, and it was obviously in extreme pain. So much so that the Sharingan pattern in his eyes flickered. Uchiha Madara snorted coldly, but the blue Susanoo flew over and fought with Ishigamihara again, while forcing him back. Kid, I hope you can survive my next attack. The two have fought several times since they met, and even the collision between the Susanoo's has lasted for a while. Uchiha Madara had to admit that the kid in front of him was definitely the most difficult to deal with in the ninja world. Even in his prime, it would take some effort to completely defeat him. And now, Uchiha Madara didn't want to continue to entangle with the kid in front of him. With a thought, he flew out of the Susanoo and landed on the top of Four Tails' head. The Susanoo also disappeared. Seeing this, Ishigamihara's pupils shrank, and he had a premonition of something. As expected, Uchiha Madara made seals with both hands and then shouted loudly. Then, light blue chakra burst out from Uchiha Madara, and then quickly spread to the entire body of Four Tails, covering it with a layer of armor, and armed to the teeth. Following the trend, under the control of Uchiha Madara, the chakra on Four Tails' body boiled, and the chakra at the broken arm also surged, and then condensed into flesh and blood, until a new arm grew out with a puff, and the injury was completely healed. Come on, kid. Ishigamihara took a deep breath, and without hesitation, he put his hands together and shouted, Wood-style wooden golem jutsu. Ishigamihara saw the Susanoo on his body disappear, his body fell, and then stepped on the head of a wooden golem. The wooden golem grew rapidly, and in just one or two breaths, it expanded to the same level as Four Tails, or even exceeded it. Then, light red chakra surged out from Ishigamihara's body, and then quickly wrapped wooden golem, also covered it with a layer of armor, no less than the Kangshenki on Four Tails. In the blink of an eye, the powerful Four Tails and the powerful wooden golem were formed. The two faced each other from a distance of hundreds of meters, and the patterns in their eyes rotated at the same time. At the same time, Four Tails and wooden golem under them rushed towards each other, and the ground was trampled into large areas of cracks and vibrations wherever they passed. Boom! Once again, the vibration was particularly violent, and the place where the two sides collided burst into dazzling light. It was Ishigamihara's wooden golem. A huge Rasengan suddenly appeared in the hand of Ishigamihara, and was controlled by Ishigamihara to press hard on the powerful Four Tails. At the same time, a ball of violent energy spit out from the mouth of the powerful Four Tails. It was the tailed beast bomb, which also hit the powerful wooden golem fiercely. Golem's chest. Boom! The explosion occurred, flames shot up into the sky, and the power was as great as a nuclear explosion, which blew out a huge pit with a diameter of more than 100 meters. Boom! Both the Four Tails and the wooden golem flew backwards at the same time. Their bodies were covered with scars, and they fell heavily on the surrounding mountains, instantly smashing the mountains into pieces. Countless boulders flew, and the roar shook the sky. Ishigamihara's eyelids twitched, and at this moment he no longer cared about the consumption of pupil power. The red armor on the wooden golem became darker. On the other hand, Uchiha Madara's condition at this moment was not as good as Ishigamihara's. The armor on the four tails became 3 points thinner. Ha 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 ha! Uchiha Madara laughed wildly at the sky, extremely excited. I recognize you, kid. D. Then Four Tails lay down, opened his mouth, and more chakra gathered, and a larger tail beast bomb quickly took shape. Seeing this, Ishigamihara controlled wooden golem to raise his right hand high and raised it to the sky. Chakra gathered in the palm of his hand, accompanied by a high-frequency humming sound. A huge Rasengan took shape, and around the Rasengan, there were sharp corners like blades, nollie spinning rapidly. The next moment, Tail Beast Bomb shot out, destroying everything along the way. Wooden Golem swung his hand violently, and the huge wind-style spiral shuriken in his hand shot out. The two collided with each other, and the roar produced seemed to shake the heaven and earth. Both Ishigamihara and Uchiha Madara were enveloped by this huge roar at this moment. The elephant was invisible, and the sound was inaudible. At this moment, the two seemed to have lost their hearing. They only felt that the surroundings were quiet and silent, and they could only see the impact like a storm spreading in front of them. For Tails was thrown out, and the huge body was spinning in the air. The wooden golem was pushed back by the huge air wave, and his feet plowed deep grooves on the ground. Boom! The explosion sound only fell into the ears of the two people at this moment. They both groaned at the same time and covered their eyes together. Uchiha Madara's eyes were bleeding, and he gritted his teeth slightly. Damn, have these eyes reached their limit? Ishigamihara let go of his hand, only feeling a stinging pain in his eyes, nothing else. 054 in this battle. The name resounded throughout the ninja world at this time. Uchiha Madara's eyes were not Rinnegan, but a pair of 3-tomo Sharingan, which were obviously installed later. After all, they were not his original eyes. Even if Uchiha Madara could forcefully use Susanoo, the burden on these eyes was obviously not light. In this way, after the war, it seemed natural that the eyes reached their limit. As for Ishigamihara, he had Mangeki, and it was Mangeki with enhanced pupil power, so he naturally would not have the same problem as Uchiha Madara, and it was no problem to bear the battle. The only thing to worry about was that at his current age, his body was not fully developed, and such high-intensity use of pupil power would naturally put a burden on his body and eyes. It was just that, after all, they were his own eyes, and his body had been strengthened by the characteristics of the skills, so there were not too many problems, which was a complete advantage over Uchiha Madara. In terms of quantity, Ishigamihara's advantage was also very obvious. Just like now, when Uchiha Madara was restoring Four Tails' majestic appearance, the wooden golem under Ishigamihara's feet took the lead and stood up and rushed towards the majestic Four Tails again. The buzzing sound sounded again in the battlefield. Ishigamihara didn't care about the chaotic aftermath of the battlefield at the moment. The wooden golem leaped nearly 100 meters and landed in front of the majestic Four Tails. The huge palm stretched out and directly grabbed Four Tails' neck. Little devil! Uchiha Madara looked up and felt that this scene was somewhat familiar. He looked at Ishigamihara and roared, "Uchiha Madara!" Ishigamihara responded. At this time, 290 seemed to respond only by calling the other party's name. After the voice fell, the wooden golem clenched his fist with his other hand and punched it hard, as if smashing a mountain, and crashed into Four Tails' face. Four Tails felt pain and was extremely angry. He struggled hard, but he could not get rid of the hand of wooden golem. 1 punch, 2 punches, 3 punches. Punches came down one after another, and each time the armor on Four Tails' body collapsed. As the attack continued, the armor could no longer protect Four Tails. The roar was deafening, but it still could not stop the destruction. Uchiha Madara did not think about fighting back, but under the continuous attack of the powerful wooden golem, Four Tails could only resist with difficulty. At some moments, he simply could not resist and was completely defeated. How could Uchiha Madara accept this? He stared at Ishigamihara and felt the failure again. The unwillingness filled his heart, and Uchiha Madara was extremely angry. But the next moment, Uchiha Madara was suddenly startled, and a sense of crisis suddenly emerged in his heart. He subconsciously wanted to dodge, but it was too late. Uchiha Madara lowered his head, a little stunned, and saw that a short blade had appeared on his chest without knowing when, and the short blade had sunk into his chest, leaving only the handle outside. Blood gushed out of his mouth at the same time, and Uchiha Madara felt his body go limp, as if all the strength in his body had been lost. When, at this moment, there was a piece of cloth in Ishigamihara's hand, but it was the cloth at the chest position of Uchiha Madara. It was this piece of cloth that exchanged positions with the short blade in his hand, allowing Ishigamihara to successfully put the short blade into Uchiha Madara's chest. Ishigamihara let out a long breath, and then raised 2 fingers, and a clone appeared beside him, who used the transformation technique and turned into another person. When this person appeared, Uchiha Madara was stunned with disbelief, and then opened his mouth and called out the person's name. The next moment, Ishigamihara's clone, or more precisely, the clone that possessed Uchiha Izuna's soul, opened his eyes, looking confused at first, and then he just happened to meet Uchiha Madara's eyes. Is this clone technique? Little devil, big brother? Uchiha Izuna's face was full of disbelief. He saw his big brother Uchiha Madara, but the latter had already shown his old age, and at this moment, there was a short blade stuck in his chest, obviously seriously injured. No, it was not a fatal injury. Uchiha Izuna could naturally see the current situation at a glance. Whether it was the battlefield or the current situation between the two, he felt uneasy. Big brother Uchiha Madara was going to die. No. Swish. Uchiha Izuna appeared in front of the entire Uchiha class in an instant, squatted down and supported Uchiha Madara with a graceful look on his face. 13x. Uchiha Madara coughed up blood again, but his expression was quite relaxed. He stared at Uchiha Izuna carefully, reached out his hand, and touched the familiar face. It's great to see you again, Izuna. Brother. Uchiha Izuna's eyes were bloodshot, and he had unconsciously activated the Sharingan. Don't say it, brother. Use that technique. Uchiha Madara smiled slightly, and regardless of the injury on his chest, he pulled out the short blade and threw it out, letting the blood on his chest flow. Brother. Uchiha Izuna became more nervous. Uchiha Madara shook his head and said, "Don't worry about me." Then he stood up, crossed his arms again, and looked proud. I am Uchiha. Staring at Ishigamihara, Uchiha Madara spoke again. Little boy, tell me your name. Ishigamihara did not move from beginning to end. Hearing this, he said, My name is Ishigamihara. You must have known a long time ago. You won this time, but you won't win forever. I will wait for the day when you grow up completely and then defeat you. No one can stand in front of me. Not Hashirama, and not you. Ishigamihara just nodded slightly and didn't say much. Izuna, go back to Huangquan. I will go to Huangquan to see you after completing my dream, and then we will reunite. Uchiha Izuna opened his mouth to speak, but in the end he didn't say anything. We will meet again. Uchiha Madara patted Uchiha Izuna's shoulder and said no more. Uchiha Izuna nodded and lowered his head at the same time. I know, big brother. Uchiha Madara smiled and fell backwards, but in the next moment, his body began to hollow and disappeared in an instant. Seeing this, Uchiha Izuna breathed a sigh of relief. On the other side, Ishigamihara frowned and looked to the other side. A few hundred meters away, Uchiha Madara appeared there. Little boy, we will see each other again. As soon as the words fell, Uchiha Madara's figure sank into the ground and disappeared, and Uchiha Madara's chakra fluctuations also disappeared. Uchiha Madara stared at the place where he disappeared. His expression was a little solemn. He had already turned on his perception and the inside of the white eyes to the maximum, but he did not find any trace of the other party leaving. It seems that the ability that Uchiha Madara has in his hands is really extraordinary. Little boy. At this time, Uchiha Izuna raised his head and looked at Ishigamihara. You can't stop my brother. Ishigamihara's face returned to calm, and then he said, I never thought of stopping him, as long as he stood in my way. While speaking, 9 chains suddenly flew out from behind Ishigamihara, binding the limbs and 4 long tails of 4 tails. And then he spoke again. Like Uchiha Madara said, "No one can stand in front of me. You can't, and your big brother Uchiha Madara can't either." This damn kid. For some reason, Uchiha Izuna's heart skipped a beat after hearing this, and he had an inexplicable ominous premonition, and he became more worried about Uchiha Madara. After staying in Ishigamihara's body for so long, no one knew Ishigamihara's horror better than him, especially the bottomless potential, which was terrifying just thinking about it. "Thank you very much for your help. We are together by fate, and fate brings us apart. Our fate ends here. Goodbye," Ishigamihara said, and raised 2 fingers again, and then he released Shadow Clone. The next moment, Uchiha Izuna's body turned into white smoke and exploded. Before the explosion, Uchiha Izuna just stared at Ishigamihara deeply without speaking. Ishigamihara exhaled lightly and glanced at the battlefield, and finally his eyes stopped on 4 tails. "Let my name resound throughout the ninja world from this battle. 055 the power of 1 person. Walala." 9 chains trembled, and their color was golden, as if they bound the entire space. For Tails, who was in the middle, screamed to the sky. No matter how hard it struggled, it was difficult to break free. Damn it. How could it be? What happened? The Sharingan pattern in 4 Tails' eyes disappeared and was replaced by a kind of agility. Obviously, he had regained consciousness. Seeing the situation at this time, although he didn't know what happened, he still struggled instinctively. Unfortunately, adamant sealing chains is the ultimate sealing technique of the Uzumaki clan. It is already quite terrifying for ordinary people to use it, not to mention that the current user is Ishigamihara. When he activates it, even the tailed beast will find it difficult to break free. Even if Ishigamihara only has 30% of his chakra left, it is still the same. "Little devil, let me go!" For Tails opened his mouth and wanted to condense tailed beast bomb, but was hit by a chain directly on his face, and his skin was torn, and he howled miserably. "Please be quiet." Ishigamihara's voice was not loud, but revealed and unquestionable. "Wait for the war to end. I will give you freedom. Now be quiet." The freedom that Ishigamihara said may be different from the freedom that 4 Tails understood, but who cares? For Tails is still struggling. The tailed beasts are all unruly, and 4 Tails is the same. Naturally, he doesn't want to let himself be sealed by a little devil, but the adamantine sealing chains in this state are not something 4 Tails can break free of. After all, the adamantine sealing chains that Ishigamihara casts are the highest 9 chains, and they are not reserved. Ishigamihara bit his finger, quickly took it, and then pressed 1 hand on the top of the wooden golem's head. Summoning technique. Bang! A burst of white smoke dissipated, and a huge wooden basin appeared in front of Ishigamihara. The wooden basin was very simple and looked like a bathtub, more than half a person's height. The outer periphery was hooped with 3 circles of special metal, and there were dense spells on the surface. There was a circle of straps wrapped in the middle, and there was a tightly fitting lid on the top. Ishigamihara opened the lid, made seals with both hands again, and then shouted softly. The chain behind the waist suddenly tightened, pulling 4 Tails to Ishigamihara closer, and in the process, the chains of adamantine sealing chains became tighter and tighter. At the same time, Ishigamihara put his other hand on the wooden barrel and saw a chain suddenly shot out from the opening of the wooden barrel, merging into the chains of adamantine sealing chains, and then dragged 4 Tails into the wooden barrel. For Tails struggled throughout the process, but as the chain dragged, For Tails' body got closer and closer to Ishigamihara, and as the distance shortened, its body gradually shrank until it reached the top of the wooden golem, less than 2 people tall. Roar! For Tails finally roared unwillingly, but it was useless in the end. He could only watch himself being swallowed by the barrel. His eyes finally stopped at Ishigamihara, as if he wanted to remember him. His eyes were full of anger and violence. Snap! Ishigamihara closed the lid and formed seals with his hands, and saw the spell on the barrel spread rapidly, sealing the entire barrel tightly. This barrel belongs to the Uzumaki clan. That is, the legacy of Uzumaki Mito inherited by Ishigamihara, and is a container specially used to temporarily seal the tailed beast. It once sealed 9 tails, and this time it was used to seal 4 tails, which can be regarded as making the best use of it. After doing all this, Ishigamihara breathed a sigh of relief. The sealing of 4 tails was not difficult, but 4 tails Jinchuriki was also sealed at the same time. Orochimaru should be given the responsibility to take care of this matter. Ishigamihara did not intend to take charge of this matter. Looking around the battlefield, this place had been destroyed beyond recognition by the aftermath of the battle between him and Uchiha Madara. There were ruins everywhere, and there were no less than 10 broken mountains, which showed how fierce the battle between the two was. Feeling his own chakra, especially the chakra that had begun to recover as the battle stopped, Ishigamihara did not hesitate, raised 2 fingers, and the powerful wooden golem under his feet turned and headed towards another battlefield. The battle between Ishigamihara and Uchiha Madara was over, but the battlefield on the other side was still waiting for him to participate. At this time, what Ishigamihara had to do was to bring the power of victory to completely end this battle. On the other side, Orochimaru and Jiraiya were holding back Hans of the Salamander, who suddenly appeared after the 2 summoned the summoning beast and completely restricted the 2's movements with his own strength. Rather than saying that Orochimaru and Jiraiya were holding back Hans of the Salamander, it would be better to say that Hans of the Salamander was holding back Konoha's counterattack with his own strength. As a result, the pressure on Konoha suddenly increased, and the situation was precarious. "Can you still hold on?" Orochimaru asked. Not far away, Jiraiya, standing on the head of the big toad, was panting, looked at the battlefield, and his expression was firm, and then reset. "Don't worry, you're not going to die yet. Be careful of that guy's poison. I'll hold him back, and you lead the charge," Jiraiya said, and used the summoning technique again. With 2 bangs, 2 little toads appeared in front of him. "Boss Fukasaku, Sage Shima, thank you for your help." The 2 little toads were Sage Fukasaku and Sage Shima. They were not surprised to be summoned at this moment, and they didn't even say anything. They jumped onto Jiraiya's shoulders together. Jiraiya nodded to Orochimaru, took a deep breath, and said in a deep voice, "Although I haven't fully mastered it, I can't care so much at this time." Sage Fukasaku, "Little Jiraiya, you have to be careful. You can't hold on to that state for too long." Sage Shima also nodded, "Don't die." Immediately, Jiraiya's face changed, his eyes turned into amphibious eyes, and there were special lines on his face. "Let's start." As soon as the voice fell, the toad under his feet jumped and rushed towards Hans of the Salamander. The latter also had a summoning beast under his feet, but it was another salamander. Its body color was slightly lighter than the one in the battle with Ishigamihara, but it was also huge in size. Facing the attack of the big toad, it was not afraid at all. At this time, Hans of the Salamander's chest was protected by a special armor. As for how the injury was recovered, no one knew, but his combat power had obviously returned to normal, which was not necessarily a good thing for Konoha. In this way, Jiraiya alone, especially Jiraiya who had not fully recovered, was resisting Hans of the Salamander alone. Even if he entered Sage mode, he would still feel great pressure, especially Jiraiya's Sage mode was not complete, and the power he could exert was naturally not as good as the real Sage mode. As a result, Jiraiya soon fell into a disadvantage as time went by and even accidentally inhaled poison gas, causing his head to become dizzy and his combat power to drop sharply. Fortunately, with him, to contain him, Orochimaru activated the summoning beast wants you to make up for the shortcomings of Konoha, sweeping away the weak situation just now, and led the Konoha ninja to a successful counterattack. Oomph. Seeing this, Hans of the Salamander snorted coldly, stamped his feet, and the salamander under his feet immediately opened his mouth and sprayed out terrible venom, which was about to fall on the big toad. The latter jumped away quickly, but still visibly contaminated with some venom, and his body immediately became stiff and weak. Bunta, Jiraiya was shocked, but Gamabunta gritted his teeth and persisted. Damn it! Seeing this, Jiraiya did not dare to hesitate, and quickly lifted the summoning technique, and Gamabunta exploded with a bang and disappeared into white smoke. Little Jiraiya, the situation is not good. Seeing this, Fukasaku Sage said in a heavy tone, obviously having a bad premonition. Jiraiya took a deep breath and was about to say something when he started coughing violently. Seeing this, Fukasaku Sage and Shima Sage were startled. Just at this moment, a roar came from afar, and the earth shook with it, and both the sound and the vibration were very rhythmic. It felt like something huge was stepping on the ground, because both the sound and the vibration were getting closer and closer. Hans of the Salamander was startled, turned his head, and looked. His expression changed. In the distance, a huge wooden golem was running towards the battlefield quickly. Hans of the Salamander had excellent eyesight, and even though he was far away, he could still see the hands above the wooden golem embracing the boy. As a result, Hans of the Salamander's heart sank. Even though he saw that Range Shinobi and Rock Shinobi had the upper hand on the battlefield at this time, he still shouted and gave orders. Retreat! Everyone on the battlefield could already see the giant in the distance, and their faces changed. The Konoha side looked excited, while the coalition forces of Range Shinobi and Rock Shinobi looked miserable. 056, where the wooden golem is threatening 2 villages. Boom! Then the huge wooden golem leaped, and the ground beneath its feet instantly shattered into pieces. It soared into the air and pressed down on the battlefield like a mountain. No, don't, run, damn it. On the battlefield, the people on Range Shinobi and Rock Shinobi's side were terrified and frightened when they saw the huge wooden golem falling from the sky. Some people just ran away, some were hysterical after making up their minds to die, and some were already in a trance. But all this could not stop the wooden golem, controlled by Ishigamihara, from falling. Boom! The earth trembled, and the ground cracked where the wooden golem landed, and the soil and rocks splashed, and the ground vibrated like waves, spreading to all directions. For a while, smoke and dust rolled and whistled in the wind. Sagal Shen Eber. Countless screams rang out at this moment, and I don't know how many Range Shinobi and Rock Shinobi ninjas were blown backwards by the violent wind. Some of them were smashed by flying stones while still in midair, while others fell to the ground and turned into meat paste. This was a jump, and the appearance of wooden golem had already changed the entire battlefield. Jiraiya staggered and finally managed to stabilize his body in the violent vibration. He stared at the huge wooden golem with disbelief and imperceptible ecstasy in his eyes. It's with style. Little Jiraiya, that's with style. Fukasaku Senin was also shocked at this moment. With a long lifespan, he naturally had a vision far beyond Jiraiya. The moment he saw the wooden golem appear, he knew its identity. That child, Shima Senin, focused on Ishigamihara above the wooden golem. The expression on his frog face was vivid and quite surprised. It's Harakun. Jiraiya laughed loudly and then shouted, "Everyone, fight back! Oh, haha, kill them. We won." At this moment, the morale of the Konoha ninjas was extremely high, and there was no trace of decadence, especially the moment when the wooden golem appeared, and the result of the wooden golem falling at this moment, which made the people of Konoha extremely excited. Then, they saw these people mustering all their strength and chasing after the defeated Range Shinobi and Rock Shinobi. In their opinion, victory was already in sight. Swoosh! Orochimaru appeared beside Ishigamihara. Looking at the huge wooden golem under his feet, his mood was excited, and his face showed shock. "I really underestimated you, Harakun." Ishigamihara just turned around and smiled slightly. "Thank you for your hard work, Orochimaru-sama." Swish! Jiraiya also appeared, but he staggered after falling. If Orochimaru hadn't helped him, he would have fallen. "Master Jiraiya." Ishigamihara took the initiative to greet him. Jiraiya laughed and patted Ishigamihara on the shoulder, looking very familiar, and then said, "Great, young man. At this age, you still master the wood style. Your future is limitless." These words were sincere, but when he saw Ishigamihara's eyes, Jiraiya was a little shocked. "I'm afraid your bloodline will be a bit troublesome." He He was talking about the Byakugan and Sharingan. After all, in Jiraiya's view, both Hyuga and Uchiha were the kind of ninja clans that adhere to tradition, especially in terms of their own bloodline, which they valued very much. Now that their own bloodline has been leaked, I think either of these two families can accept it. Orochimaru licked his lips and chuckled. In this situation, it is the Hyuga and Uchiha families who have to find ways to curry favor with Harakun. Jiraiya was startled. Then he reacted, scratched his head, and laughed. Aha! It's true. Harakun has with style, such a powerful combat power. Uchiha and Hyuga are in trouble now. The two looked at each other and understood what the other meant. The third Hokage will definitely take this opportunity to do something to the two families. This kind of thing is too normal for their own teacher. Fukasaku and Sesame stared at Ishigamihara as if trying to see something from him. Ishigamihara sensed the realization, glanced at him, nodded slightly, and ignored him. Little Jiraiya, things have come to this point. We can't help much. Yes, little Jiraiya, we'll leave first. Jiraiya nodded hurriedly and thanked him repeatedly. And then the two toads, Fukasaku and Sesame, disappeared into white smoke. Jiraiya let out a long breath, collapsed on the top of wooden golem, and gasped. I'm so tired. Orochimaru took a deep breath and then said, Are you going to chase after me? Ishigamihara thought about it, but still shook his head and said, No, I won't show up for the rest of the matter. As he spoke, he patted the big wooden barrel beside him and said, I will seal the four tails and its Jinchuriki in it. It can be used for a few days. You two need to make a decision on how to deal with this matter. The two had seen the big wooden barrel a long time ago. When they heard about this, they were naturally happy, but more of them were a little headache. The tailed beast and Jinchuriki, TSK, it's really troublesome. Orochimaru, do you want to return it to Rock Shinobi? Jiraiya asked. Orochimaru pondered for a moment, then shook his head. Not for now. Let the teacher handle this matter. You mean you want to bring four tails back to the village? What if something goes wrong in the middle? Orochimaru chuckled. That's not something we need to consider. Okay, I'll arrange it. Don't worry. Wait until this battle is over. As he said, Orochimaru said to Ishigamihara, Thank you for your hard work. Mr. Hara, please stay here for a while. Everyone needs you to boost morale. Ishigamihara nodded, and without saying much, he sat cross-legged on the spot. His expression was very calm. He didn't intend to tell anyone about the battle with Uchiha Madara. At that time, the two were far away from the battlefield. Although there was a lot of noise, no one saw the real situation of the two fighting. Therefore, both Orochimaru and Jiraiya thought that the aftermath of the battle came from the battle between Ishigamihara and Four Tails. Jiraiya and Orochimaru left the top of the wooden golem. They had more important things to do, and Ishigamihara just waited like this, without any urgency. However, the existence of the wooden golem gave Range Shinobi, Rock Shinobi, and Konoha a completely different impression. In case of low morale, the other side is as anxious as a dog who has lost its home, and the other side is full of fighting spirit and naturally has a high momentum. There was no surprise in the direction of the battle. Soon Ishigamihara heard the signal representing victory. In other words, Konoha won the final victory in this battle. 57 Hokage, the place for the virtuous. All the Konoha shinobi who returned were injured. Some were wounded, some were carried back directly, and some even became incomplete corpses. But without exception, the living people had smiles on their faces, but the sadness deep in their hearts could not be hidden. War is like this: destruction, death, pain. It seems that all negative words can be associated with it. But on the contrary, victory is something worth celebrating after all. After Konoha's people here defeated the strong with the weak and defeated the strong enemy, they should enjoy this hard-earned good fruit. Everyone looked at Ishigamihara with reverence and excitement. The young man in front of them was the key to Konoha's victory here. No one could ignore him. Everyone wanted to get close to him, but they seemed hesitant. Orochimaru came to Ishigamihara's side, followed by Nawaki, who was drowsy and drooping his arms, with a silly smile on his face and a grinning look that was very funny. In this war, the people of Konoha paid a lot, and so did Nawaki. Without the tension and recklessness of the First War, he showed his talent and grew up in the baptism of war. Go, say a few words to everyone. Orochimaru patted Ishigamihara 11 on the shoulder and encouraged him. Ishigamihara nodded, took a few steps, and suddenly thought of something and began to make seals with his hands. Wood-style falling, tree-turning forest technique. The next moment, the wooden golem, which had been standing not far away, suddenly cracked and then broke into pieces on a large scale, with a continuous cracking sound. Countless debris fell from it, and after falling to the ground, they quickly turned into scattered powder. Immediately afterwards, young seedlings grew from the powder, gradually growing taller and stronger, until they grew into thick trees and stood tall. The wooden golem disappeared, replaced by a large forest with lush branches and leaves. Everyone watched all this, watching the wooden golem turn into powder, watching the saplings emerge from the powder, and watching the saplings turn into a forest, restoring the forest that was originally destroyed by the battle and turning it into a natural growth scene. Oh, it's with style. It's really with style. Too awesome. I don't know who started it. And then cheers rang out in the battlefield, with joy and enthusiasm in the voices, and everyone looked at Ishigamihara with longing. Wood style represents hope, and now, Ishigamihara is everyone's hope. Everyone, Ishigamihara spoke. His voice was not loud, but it instantly overwhelmed everyone's cheers. The noise gradually stopped, and everyone present looked at Ishigamihara, waiting for him to speak again. In the history of a ninja world, there was the chaotic Sengoku, the struggles between families, the fights between people, and the differences between good and evil. First Hokage, Senju Hashirama, ended the war-torn ninja world, created Konoha with 5 major ninja villages, and brought U.S. peace. Everyone listened quietly, thinking a lot. Everyone knew this history, but never thought deeply about it. Peace is hard, and keeping peace is even harder. For this reason, in the First Ninja World War, Second Hokage, Senju Tobarama, lost his life and brought victory to Konoha. With his death, let us have peace again. Now, it is the Second Ninja World War. The dead companions used their lives to protect this hard-won peace, but someone insisted on taking it away. Everyone, are you willing? After the voice fell, everyone shouted in unison. No. Yes, no. Kill them. Protect our peace. That's right. Protect the village and protect peace. Orochimaru and Jiraiya looked at each other, both with a little strange look. Ishigamihara's voice sounded again. Yes, all this is hard-won, so we should protect it all the more. So, whoever wants to destroy our peace, tell me, what should we do? Ishigamihara's voice was not loud, but his words could easily stir up the emotions of everyone present, and someone immediately shouted, "Kill the enemy." In an instant, these voices converged into one and echoed on the battlefield. Ishigamihara raised his hand, and the voices of the crowd stopped again, and Ishigamihara said solemnly, "Whether you or I, we are all beneficiaries of peace, so whoever wants to destroy all this will be our enemy. My name is Ishigamihara. I have the wood-style bloodline. I will use the wood style to protect everything. I will stand in front of you. Wherever I look, peace will come." The field was quiet at first, followed by thunderous cheers. Everyone's emotions have been mobilized, both in terms of momentum and fighting spirit. The ninjas of Konoha looked at Ishigamihara with excitement and satisfaction in their eyes. With the power of wood style, such a young man is worthy of their following. Yes, I don't know how many people in the field have subconsciously placed Ishigamihara's identity in a high position. Even though Ishigamihara's real identity is just a genin now, these people have subconsciously ignored this point and instead regarded him as a strong man like Orochimaru and Jiraiya from the bottom of their hearts. In other words, even if Ishigamihara does not have a real identity now, just relying on what he said just now, Uehara has a very high reputation. 580, the people immersed in the hot atmosphere may not have figured it out, but Orochimaru was keenly aware of this. And at the same time, he also somewhat understood Ishigamihara's thoughts and made some guesses about it. "Great, Harakun, you are destined to become the Hokage," Orochimaru commented. Jiraiya was a little scratching his head. Although he hadn't fully reacted yet, he felt that after Ishigamihara's words came out, he should not treat him too casually. This is the change brought about by Ishigamihara's words unconsciously, and Ishigamihara is happy to see it. Those words just now should not have been said by Ishigamihara. In fact, the one who should have said them was Hokage Sarutobi Hiruzen, but Yusho said them. In this way, people like Orochimaru who are sensitive to shoji can naturally understand what Ishigamihara is thinking. So Orochimaru would say that Ishigamihara is destined to become Hokage, which is also a kind of recognition. You are too kind, Lord Orochimaru. I still have a lot to do. Ishigamihara did not refute, but was a little polite. He knew that Orochimaru understood his thoughts, which was just as he wanted. Hokage, the virtuous person, will be in the position, and he is that virtuous person. 058, add 2 skills. Since the battle ended that day, Ishigamihara has been idle. It's not just talk, but there is really nothing to do. The Rain Shinobi side directly retreated, not giving Konoha any chance to contact. To put it nicely, it was defending, and to put it bluntly, it was purely escaping. Fortunately, Konoha has no interest in occupying Rain Shinobi, so there is no need to worry about the pressure from Rain Shinobi for a while. On the contrary, Rock Shinobi jumped a lot. The reason is that Four Tails and Jinchuriki are still in Konoha's hands, which is naturally unacceptable to Rock Shinobi. So as expected, Rock Shinobi organized another attack on Konoha, but unfortunately it was repelled by Ishigamihara and his men, which also made Rock Shinobi know the horror of Ishigamihara. In this way, Rock Shinobi can only use some small means, such as harassing from the side, just to delay Konoha's power here, so that Cloud Shinobi can also go down. But the key is that the Cloud Shinobi people are not stupid, and Cloud Shinobi and Rock Shinobi don't get along well. It's not an exaggeration to say that they are enemies, so they will naturally not cooperate. In addition, the Cloud Shinobi people are arrogant and have ambitions to dominate the ninja world. How could they go to help Rock Shinobi when he is suffering? So in the end, the pressure on Konoha was much less. After several rounds of tug-of-war, Rock Shinobi also recognized the reality and had to send people to negotiate with Konoha about Four Tails and Jinchuriki. But even Orochimaru couldn't make up his mind about this kind of thing, just because it required the Hokage to make a decision. So it really won't end in a short time, and the matter about Four Tails and Jinchuriki also requires a long period of discussion and shirking. In this way, Ishigamihara naturally became idle. Now, Ishigamihara doesn't have much to do, and he rarely leaves the camp. He only does a few things every day. First, teach Nawaki about with style, and help Nawaki practice with style. Second, Ishigamihara needs to learn from Tsunade about medical ninjutsu. He needs new knowledge to upgrade his skills. Ishigamihara's other skill experience has not increased much at present. Basically, increases every day or two. The only difference is that after entering the battlefield and experiencing several powerful battles, the system panel finally turned it into a combat skill. In this way, Ishigamihara also has an additional skill feature. Combat 79/1000 IV1 Enhanced Intuition. After experiments, Ishigamihara also knew the specific effect of Enhanced Intuition. In short, it is to improve Ishigamihara's intuition during battle. It seems simple to say, but don't underestimate this point. Sometimes, an inadvertent change in battle may affect the direction of the final outcome, and Enhanced Intuition just makes up for this shortcoming for Ishigamihara, giving him a kind of intuition like anticipating the enemy, which is very useful for him. In fact, Ishigamihara had imagined long ago whether combat could be turned into a skill. Because before that, there were combat courses during the period of studying in the ninja school, and it was not just once or twice, but even if there were many times, things related to combat were not turned into skills. But after going to the battlefield, the combat experience successfully turned combat into a skill. From this point of view, in order to turn combat into a skill, it is necessary to meet the standards of full effort and qualified strength. However, looking at the experience required for the upgrade, Ishigamihara fell into deep thought. Now it is only IV1, and who knows how long it will take to upgrade to IV2. Fortunately, Ishigamihara has grown up now, and the demand for skill characteristics is no longer as high as before, so he has relaxed his mentality. Of course, it is not completely without good news. For example, the combat skill has increased to 79 skill experience after it was turned into a skill, which is completely different from other skills that increase a little bit at a time. In this way, the increase in specific skill experience is much faster than the increase in life-oriented or single skill experience, which is a good thing for Ishigamihara. Otherwise, it would take decades to accumulate just 1,000 experience points, which is naturally not what Uyama Yasushi wants to see. By the way, in addition to the combat skill, Ishigamihara has another skill, teaching. This ability comes from teaching Nawaki wood style. After a serious teaching, it was successfully turned into a skill. Teaching 172/1000. IV1. Teach students in accordance with their aptitude. Its ability effect is also very simple and direct, which can help Ishigamihara more easily judge the student's learning situation and make the most correct adjustments according to different situations, so as to enhance the student's learning effect. Don't underestimate this point, because the performance of this skill effect on Nawaki is that the latter has now completed the special Earth Attribute Chakra Nature Transformation, and is now undergoing the special Water Attribute Chakra Nature Transformation. Although there is still a long way to go before he can truly master wood style, at least this path is right, and Nawaki has mastered it quite well. According to Ishigamihara's observation, the increase in teaching skills experience is basically based on the degree of knowledge learned by students. The more knowledge students learn, the more experience they gain, and the less knowledge they learn, the less experience they naturally have. It also reflects from the side that Nawaki's learning ability is indeed good. Otherwise, the teaching skills experience would not increase so quickly. In this way, the emergence of these two abilities also gave Ishigamihara a lot of ideas. In addition to life skills, whether there are other skills is also in Ishigamihara's attempts. It's a pity that Ishigamihara has not tried it out so far, but there are signs of it. 059 Return to Konoha. The situation on the battlefield of Rain Country was temporarily quiet. Rain Shinobi did not make any moves, and Rock Shinobi also restrained himself. Thus, Ishigamihara learned from Orochimaru that Konoha had already started negotiations and communication with Rock Shinobi, and it was obvious that they were going to make arrangements for Four Tails and Jinchuriki. It had been almost half a month since the last time, and the sealed Jinchuriki had been released by Ishigamihara, but was now being held in the Konoha camp, with Jiraiya acting as its guard, saving Ishigamihara some trouble. Ishigamihara thought he would be transferred to the Rock Shinobi side to serve as a strategic deterrent to them, but he did not expect that the order from the rear was to let him return to Konoha with Four Tails Jinchuriki. In the central tent of Konoha camp, Ishigamihara frowned and looked at the mission scroll in his hand, which contained a transfer order from Konoha, which was issued by Sarutobi Hiruzen himself. Ishigamihara and Tsunade were ordered to take Four Tails Jinchuriki back to the village, and Iwaki was also ordered to go back at the same time. In the big tent, except for 003, Kai, Ishigamihara, Orochimaru, Jiraiya, and Tsunade were all present. There were only 4 of them, so some words were spoken directly. The old guy is scared. These words were said by Tsunade. Since the death of Kato Dan, Tsunade has experienced a decadent stage, and now he has barely recovered, but he has lost the momentum of the past. It seems that he has let go of many things, especially in the evaluation of this order, which can be said to be quite spicy. Ahem, Tsunade, don't say that. It will make people misunderstand. Jiraiya advised. There's no one else here. Don't think I don't know what those old guys think. Tsunade didn't care about that at all. She sneered and said, the 3 advisors are probably already worried about whether their power will be affected by the rise of Hara. As for the old guys, they're just indecisive. Orochimaru was not surprised. He just licked his lips, grinned, and said hoarsely, Tsunade, don't say such things to others. It won't do you any good. Tsunade naturally knew this, although some words no one dared to do anything to him. But after all, it had a bad impact. Fortunately, there was no one else at the scene, so Tsunade said what she thought in her heart. If she were in another place, she would naturally not do so. Alas, if Harukoin goes back, the pressure on our side will be great. Jiraiya scratched his head. Orochimaru smiled and said, "Not really. Hans of the Salamander has been scared. He doesn't dare to do much to Konoha now. Rock Shinobi has Jinchuriki in our hands, so he is naturally more passive. In this way, our main focus in the future will be on the hidden aspect." As he said that, he took out a piece of information and said directly, "Maybe we can cause some trouble for Cloud Shinobi." Ishigamihara had also seen this information, which was about some friction between Rock Shinobi and Cloud Shinobi. The two sides had accumulated grievances since the First Ninja World War, and perhaps it was just a spark away from igniting it. Ishigamihara's mind was not on this, and he put down the scroll in his hand with a calm face. "Kid, what do you think?" Tsunade asked. Calling Ishigamihara a kid does not mean that Tsunade has any opinion on Ishigamihara. On the contrary, the two get along very well, especially Ishigamihara's talent in medical ninjutsu, which is recognized by Tsunade. Beb, calling him this is just Tsunade's personality, and Ishigamihara does not care. Hearing this, Ishigamihara just smiled and said, "I don't have any ideas. Since it is the order of the Hokage, I will obey it." Sporting. Tsunade could see that Ishigamihara was speaking one way and thinking the other, but she didn't care. How could Ishigamihara not understand what Sarutobi Hiruzen and the three advisors were thinking? It was nothing more than that his achievements here were too great, his reputation was too high, and he was too young. It had reached the point where he had to care. To put it simply, he was a little too successful to be a threat to his master. There was some sarcasm towards those people in Ishigamihara's smile. As expected, no matter which senior sister he was in, Masaharu was dirty. But Ishigamihara didn't care much either, because power was the foundation, and the ninja world was a world where power belonged to oneself. Here, many things are often not determined by morality, but by the strength of power. Whether it was age, potential, or the power he possessed now, Ishigamihara had an innate advantage, even an absolute advantage. So he also wanted to see what the village's high-level officials would do to him. "Harukoin, be careful of Oda and Uchiha when you go back," Jiraiya said. He could make such an exhortation. Obviously, he agreed with Ishigamihara. Hearing this, Ishigamihara nodded slightly and smiled. "Don't worry, I won't have any problems. Instead, Uchiha and Hyuga should be more worried." "Ah, that's true. It seems that some people will have a headache after you go back." In this way, the matter is decided, and the date for Ishigamihara to go back has been set. As for whether there will be any problems here after he leaves, this is not something Ishigamihara should consider. The situation here is in a good position, and Konoha will definitely send reinforcements. So Ishigamihara doesn't need to worry too much. On the contrary, Nowaki is quite happy with the decision to transfer himself from the front line. According to him, he finally got familiar with the rhythm of the battlefield and made a good improvement. Calling him back at this time would make him a deserter. Unfortunately, this was the order of the Hokage. Even though he was the grandson of the first generation, he could not disobey the order at this time. He could only return home with resentment. In this way, Ishigamihara and his group of more than 30 people left the Konoha camp. Except for Ishigamihara and his group, most of them were seriously injured soldiers who were difficult to treat on the front line, and they returned to Konoha together. 060 Ishigamihara's toughness the return journey was smooth and there were no accidents. Because there were wounded in the team, it took almost half a month to reach the destination. It was early autumn when they set out, and late autumn when they returned. In more than a month, some things have not changed, such as Konoha, which is still the same as when Ishigamihara left, with towering city gates and noisy crowds. But some things have changed, such as Ishigamihara's identity. When he left, he was just an ordinary genin, but when he returned, he had brought a good prestige. Even though he was still a teenager, no one would ignore his existence. The crowd surged out of the gate, and countless Konoha residents gathered here to celebrate the return of the heroes. There was laughter, but also sadness. When the ashes of the dead were brought back, the grief of relatives and friends was beyond words, and the sound of wailing rang out, which soon stained the joyful atmosphere with a touch of sadness. Fortunately, this situation did not last long. Third Hokage Sarutobi Hiruzen walked out of the crowd, looked at the returnees with a smile on his face, and began his performance. Perhaps it was a true expression of emotion, or it might be intentional. Sarutobi Hiruzen said a lot. Welcome back, heroes of Konoha. It is your dedication that allows everyone to enjoy peace and tranquility. You are the leaves that make up the big tree of the village, and you use your body to block the wind and rain for everyone. Everyone listened, all with a moving look. Many wounded were excited, and they wished they could kill for Konoha on the battlefield again. Ishigamihara did not have much resentment towards Sarutobi Hiruzen, because he knew very well that Sarutobi Hiruzen's arrangement for him was just doing things that were in line with the status of a superior. If he were Sarutobi Hiruzen, without the system and many bloodlines, he would probably make the same choice. The power that cannot be controlled will make the superior vigilant no matter which world it is placed in. And the same is true for the ninja world. The only difference is that Ishigamihara did not think of standing against Sarutobi Hiruzen. On the contrary, he admired this Hokage. He was not lacking in skills, and at the same time, he could keep a kind side to the outside world. This is not something that ordinary people can do. And the most important thing is that Sarutobi Hiruzen was ordered to take over the responsibility of Hokage in the battlefield and stabilize Konoha village in the midst of the storm and continued to prosper. Say he is kind or hypocritical. It is rare for a normal ninja who is not from the Bloodline ninja clan and is not a descendant of Tsutsuki to be able to do this. However, this does not mean that Ishigamihara will be manipulated by others. With a smile, listening to Sarutobi Hiruzen's theory of the will of fire, Ishigamihara also made comments in his heart. The theory of the will of fire was just that in Ishigamihara's eyes. It was nothing more than a means to unite the forces of Konoha. However, in the ninja world, this theory was considered advanced. At least it could be recognized by everyone in Konoha and was very useful. Ishigamihara never thought of changing this theory. On the contrary, being in Konoha, supporting this theory was also a kind of correctness, which could provide Ishigamihara with a lot of convenience. Original. Sarutobi Hiruzen came to Ishigamihara, patted his shoulder with his hand, and his face was full of encouragement and admiration. You did a good job, showing your potential and talent. You are the hero of the leaf. Ishigamihara bowed slightly and smiled. You are too flattering, Hokage-sama. I just did what I should do. It's nothing. As he spoke, Ishigamihara glanced at the two consultants behind him with expressionless faces, and Shimura Dan's was not present. Tsunade on the side was a little impatient and said, "Don't stand here, old man." Sarutobi Hiruzen was not surprised to hear that, but sighed and said to Tsunade, "I'm glad you're back." Dell. Tsunade turned his head and ignored it. Sarutobi Hiruzen didn't feel embarrassed and seemed to have liked Tsunade's attitude for a long time. Ishigamihara knew why Tsunade was like that, and it was related to Nawaki because of what happened to Nawaki when he went to the battlefield. Tsunade had naturally thought about it. If there was no evidence, I'm afraid Tsunade would dare to turn against him on the spot. So in this case, even if the incident had nothing to do with Sarutobi Hiruzen as a Hokage, it was his fault for this incident, and Tsunade's attitude was obvious. Nawaki was embarrassed on the side, but he didn't dare to say anything. He knew his sister's temper too well. Let's not talk about this anymore. Anyway, welcome home. The returning team entered the village amidst the welcome of the crowd. Tsunade, as the leader, took Ishigamihara and Nawaki to the Hokage building. As for the Four Tails Jinchuriki, who was brought back as a captive, he had long been accepted by the Umbu people. It was not something Ishigamihara needed to worry about where he was taken. In the Hokage's office, Ishigamihara saw Shimura Dan's sitting on a sofa on one side, with his eyes slightly closed, as if he was taking a nap, but Ishigamihara could sense the gaze from the other person under his eyelids. "Old man, I need an explanation." Tsunade took the lead. Sarutobi Hiruzen also had a serious expression, And of course he knew what Tsunade was referring to. Umbu has already found out that the information leaked when Nawaki left the village was because of a traitor in the village. So this is my responsibility as the Hokage. Nawaki scratched his head and hurriedly said, "It's nothing, Hokage-sama." "Ah, who is that traitor?" Tsunade asked. Sarutobi Hiruzen said, "It's a Chunin, born a commoner." "How could a Chunin know the information about Nawaki?" Tsunade asked. Sarutobi Hiruzen sighed and did not answer. At this time, Shimura Dans, who was sitting next to him, said, "The traitor is called Aiken. His father is Ryotaro, and his former name was Kaishin Ryotaro." "What Ekin-kun?" Nawaki was startled, a little bit unbelievable, and subconsciously said, "How could Ekin-kun be a traitor? He obviously taught me a lot of things, and his father is a hero of the village." Shimura Dan still had that indifferent look and said calmly, "Nothing is impossible. People will change, and it is indeed a bit unexpected that he will become a traitor, but this is reality." Why? Why did he do this? Nawaki couldn't accept it, out of anger or unwillingness. Anyway, you can bear the name of Senju, but he can only be a civilian. Maybe this is something that he thinks is difficult to accept. Shimura Dan said, "Okay." Tsunade suddenly spoke, stopping Nawaki, who was about to speak again, staring at Shimura Dans, and said, "That's it." Shimura Dans remained silent and did not speak again. Ishigamihara glanced at the scene. Sarutobi Hiruzen frowned. The other two consultants looked calm, and the atmosphere in the Hokage office seemed solemn for a while. Original. It was Sarutobi Hiruzen who took the initiative to speak and broke the silence. Ishigamihara bowed slightly. "From now on, your level will be promoted to Junin. In addition, you will enter Umbu and serve as a small captain." This is considered to be the arrangement of Ishigamihara's next work. As for the promotion of Ishigamihara to the ninja level, Hokage has the right in this regard, and now is a war period. It could be said to be a special event. But Ishigamihara's answer will make the faces of several people present change slightly, especially the two consultants. "I'm sorry, Hokage. I promised Nawaki to teach him with style. Besides, I have some gains from the battlefield that need to be sorted out, and I am afraid that I will not be able to undertake other tasks in a short time." Uchiha Koharu said. His voice was serious. "Do you know what you are saying? Ishigamihara, as a ninja, you refuse the order of the Hokage. Have you forgotten the ninja code?" Ishigamihara's expression was calm, and he turned his head to stare at the other party, and his tone was also calm. "Advisor, I am just stating a fact. Ninjas are not tools for your hands." Uchiha Koharu's face suddenly changed, and he immediately scolded, but the next moment his voice stopped abruptly. Just because Ishigamihara just looked at him quietly, his left eye turned into a white eye, and his right eye was blood red with 3 black magatama. "Is this the truth that Master Mito taught me? Or do you not agree with Guang?" 061 Danzo, consultant status frozen under normal circumstances. Ishigamihara doesn't mind playing along with some people under the existing rules. After all, everyone does this. Even if Ishigamihara has amazing power, he still needs to follow the rules within the framework. But he is not an ordinary person after all. It is impossible for him to obey all orders from the upper level like ordinary ninjas.
No more novels? Take part in the voting. The most requested novels and those with the most likes will be chosen for publication on euroaudiobooks.com. There, I can upload as much as I want without the risk of receiving a strike. Our 18 novels and other content that exceed what is morally acceptable are only published on Patreon or the free novels page. Remember, the site is funded by donations on Ko-fi and Patreon memberships.